Y'all ready? Y'all ready? Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our March Committee of the Whole meeting. The first item on the agenda is the 101, the consent calendar. I need a motion.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second. Or is any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is 2.01, appearance of visitors. We will forego the usually the instructions for visitors. Yeah, I didn't bring it out. No, it's okay. No, we only have one speaker. I think she's going to be nice. Sarah Wittmeyer.
Good morning. Yes, I promise I'll be nice. Thank you for having me. My name is Sarah Wittmeyer. I am the Education Director at Conisty Nature Preserve, which is just a few miles south of us here. And first I want to say we're excited and relieved to hear that the field trip ban has been relieved somewhat. We know there's restrictions and we totally understand, but a great way to end our year at the preserve. For those of you that are not familiar with Conisty, we are a private nonprofit that manages 650 acres of green space and wildlife sanctuary area in the city limits. And we are a free access, open 7 days a week from sun up to sundown. So if you've never walked our 14 miles of trails, I do encourage you to do so. We have herons nesting, a great horned owl nesting, salamander eggs in the wetlands, and many other things that are a joy to experience. A huge part of our mission, of course, besides protecting and conserving that land for wildlife, is education. And we developed a field trip program in order to fulfill that need. If you ask any conservationist, whether they're a field researcher, a educator like myself, or people who fund conservation programs, you're gonna find a common theme, and that is positive experiences in the outdoors as a child. And so at Conisty, we feel it's extremely important to continue to offer outside environmental education experiences to students because their unstructured experience in the outdoors is becoming more and more limited as we have come into this modern age. Just last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago, I was at Rudolph Gordon Elementary. We're doing schoolyard field trips since they couldn't come to us. And I had to convince a student that it was gonna be okay to explore her schoolyard, that we were gonna be safe. And I know you have all experienced a schoolyard and know how wild they get, right? So her experience there was eye-opening, and we experience that more and more every day at the preserve, having to convince kids it's okay to go in the woods in broad daylight. So our education program takes place entirely outside. We've structured it to accommodate the school bus timetable. So it's 9:30 to 1:30 so they can get to us and get back to their routes as needed. They spend the entire day outside with us. They use nets to dip into the water. They explore the trails. They use binoculars to watch the great blue herons take care of their babies. They roll logs. They get to watch how the Reedy River changes the landscape right in front of their face, and then use our stream table to model that afterwards. So we, of course, accommodate the state standards at our field trips, and we're working to do revisions for the updated science standards that we know are coming. Is that my 2-minute warning, or am I done?
You're done.
The biggest announcement, though, is something we've been working forward for years, and under our new leadership, we finally have enough support and funding to offer free field trips for all public schools in the upstate. So please share that information with your administrators and your educators. Have them go to conistypreserve.org to get all the information about our field trip program. And if y'all as a board or anybody in the district would like to come on a tour of Conisty to see what we have to offer, we would be happy to accommodate you.
Thank you, Ms. Wittmeyer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
The next item on the agenda is Section 3 instruction. Mr. Saylor's unable to be here this morning. Ms. Wales has agreed to chair this part of the meeting. Ms. Wales, you ready?
Yeah, you guys watch out, I'm going to channel Chuck Sailors today.
Okay.
The first item on our agenda is item 3.01, alternative programs. Dr. Royster?
Thank you, Ms. Wells. If I might, before we go to that item, I just had two things I want to mention that are not directly related to this, but wanted to draw trustees' attention to, at your place, there is a book that we provided for you, Mark Perna's book on answering why. If you get an opportunity to read that, it's a great read because it very directly parallels what we're trying to do with college and career readiness. We had Mr. Perna come and speak to all the principals and all the counselors in the district. And he talks about the career trees that we use in our work. He also talks about the value of individuals receiving certifications and industry training. And one of the most interesting things in there is his explanation of the job market and looking at the 127 that he describes, that for individuals with more than a 4-year degree, there is a job out there. For individuals with a 4-year degree, there are 2 jobs out there. For individuals with industry certifications and training, there's 7 jobs out there out of every 10. And it aligns very nicely with what we're doing. So I want to provide a copy of that book to you. And the second is, very briefly, I want to recognize Dr. David McDonald, our Assistant Superintendent for Middle School Leadership, who is the newest member of the Winthrop University Board of Trustees. Congratulations, Dr. McDonald. Thank you for allowing that moment on somewhat related topics. But now to the primary topic of alternative programs, the first item. Dr. McDavid is here. We had a request coming out of my evaluation in the fall to do a review of our alternative programs, and she's going to be presenting that today. And I'll at this time turn it over to Dr. McDavid.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak on Greenville County Schools alternative programs today. We are very pleased to have some unique opportunities for our students to achieve what we consider in Greenville County as our student success. Our strategy for goal number 1 under student success is to enhance and expand our graduation and employability pathways and supports for all students. As we look at building a better graduate, that involves a lot of tools and a lot of scaffolds. Our alternative programs are designed uniquely to help support students who need additional pathways or opportunities to do so. In the Office of Academic Innovation and Technology, we wanted to give you some perspective. Alternative programs, while we also have instructional technology and our online learning, Title I and Title III. We also have alternative programs, which is a very unique fit. It was moved to academic innovation and technology a few years ago because the supports of Title I, instructional technology, and what we have in place in other programs helps to align alternative programs uniquely to the rest of our school. With these, our students are working to earn initial credit and credit recovery. We are certain that our programs align with the South Carolina Uniform Grading Policy. We ensure that we align to your GCS policy IDF with curriculum design for non-traditional learning programs. We also fit these under our State Department of Education proficiency waiver, and we follow our GCS guidelines, which are updated annually for content and credit recovery. So what our students are doing in the alternative program aligns to what is happening in our high schools and across the district. Everything we do in the alternative program is also aligned to our South Carolina standards, our GCS curriculum, and most recently we've approved Edgenuity, which is an online software platform. That platform is aligned to the standards, is approved by our academics department, and is also approved by the NCAA for students to achieve credit. Both of these avenues, GCS curriculum and Edgenuity, are aligned to the South Carolina standards and are used in both our brick and mortar schools and our alternative programs, virtually or brick and mortar as well. There are a few lines of support that we have that includes, first of all, specialized instruction. We have West Greenville School, group homes, and the Juvenile Detention Center, which will go into detail and discuss with you how we provide specialized instruction for students in those areas. Then we will discuss the middle school and high school alternative programs, followed by our virtual learning opportunities, and our adult education, which includes satellite diploma and lifelong learning. While all of these work together, they are also unique. As we discuss them, I'll share with you our purpose, the students we serve, the staffing model, and the enrollment of each of the programs. Our alternative programs do help to fulfill that promise. When I say there's a continuum and you see all of the supports, we go to great lengths to account for all the students who are supposed to be on our campuses, but possibly have disappeared from our roles. Our school system investigates whether the students transfer to another adult ed program, another school, moved out of state, or possibly is temporarily in a juvenile justice facility. Once that student has been identified, our alternative program team works with the Student Services Department to make sure that our students are engaged in learning and progressing toward high school completion. All of the alternative programs that I've mentioned earlier provide many options for non-traditional and traditional students with exceptional situations. So we'll begin with West Greenville for specialized instruction. The principal is Dr. Laura O'Loughlin, and we serve students in grades 6 through 12 based on their individual education plans. Those students are identified and placed based on significant emotional and or behavioral disabilities. The referral process is very specific, with this being the least restrictive environment for students, and it's done through the IEP process. West Greenville is located centrally, and transportation is provided from all across Greenville County schools. The supports help our students to become successful with our Positive Behavior Intervention and Support System, PBIS. We prepare students for not only the Employability Credential, but also the traditional diploma based on their IEP. We also have a nurse on staff and therapeutic programming. All staff members have annual adverse childhood experiences, or the ACEs training, to help students deal with possible past trauma. And we have the individual and family therapy through the Greenville Mental Health System. We have the Greenville Mental Health Director on our site at West Greenville, as well as we provide daily therapeutic enrichment in art, music, and movement. So the program is unique, and that students it serves and the outcomes. The Employability Education Program includes both on-campus and off-campus work experiences, and we're pleased that our students are able to go on to career pathways in applied trades, food preparation and service, automotive detailing, agriculture, lawn care and landscaping, personal fitness, material production, and personal style and design. Over the past 3 years, you see our enrollment at West Greenville. Although we have had the pandemic, our enrollment is virtually unchanged because, again, the students who are served at West Greenville are placed based on their IEP, and that being the least restrictive environment. We have our 1 director, 1 secretary, and 1 bookkeeper, and 1 receptionist. Aside from that, our staff includes 1 PE teacher, 7 special education teachers, and 8 instructional aides. Our support staff includes our social worker and a behavioral interventionist. Mental health is provided again by the Greenville Mental Health Center, and we have 3 therapists on site full-time. Our second area of specialized instruction comes from the group homes. We wanted to list the facilities that have the specialized population. Excalibur has adolescent males. Generations also has adolescent males. Our Greenville County Detention Center Adolescent Unit has incarcerated males and females. Now, while that facility is temporarily closed due to some staffing issues, we anticipate that not only will it reopen, but it will reopen and our enrollment will return to what it normally is post-pandemic. Venice is a group home that serves adolescent females. So those are the 4 group homes we serve currently, and we provide service to students in grades K through 12 from all across the state. Our students are placed in a group home, and therefore they reside in Greenville County. And because they reside in Greenville County, they may be temporarily housed in a group home, but we are required to educate all of the students by statute, regardless of the circumstance or the school of origin. The school of origin, anywhere else in the state, they receive Title I neglected and delinquent funds, and they pay us for the students who are in our group homes in Greenville County. Those funds come to us through our Title I office under Academic Innovation and Technology. Again, another way that we're able to serve under the umbrella, as well as provide additional supports. Our support includes not only direct instruction, we do have computer-assisted learning options, we provide career readiness certification, academic and career counseling, and special education services and support for students in the group homes. And staffing, before staffing, you will see the students served. The pandemic did decrease temporarily our number of students served because they are in group homes housed away from their traditional homes with faculty and staff members. So we decided in 2019-20, you see that there are 312, 2020-21, 181, and 21-22. As of right now, we've so far served only 131 students. The prior 3 years are listed so that you can see that the capacity that we have in Greenville County in all of our programs to serve. And again, post-pandemic, we anticipate that those numbers will return to normal. We have 1 principal, Dr. Larry Ertzberger, a secretary, a part-time clerk, and 1 counselor. The instructional staff includes 9 regular education teachers who circulate to the different sites to serve students. We also have 5 special education teachers and 7.5 aides. The mental health, our students receive mental health through the facilities that they are housed in. And then to our middle and high school alternative programs. Our middle school alternative program and high school alternative programs have different locations, and we try to make sure our students can be served around our district. For MSAP, we're located at 2 of our career centers, Bonds and Donaldson, as well as the site at West Greenville, centrally located. HSAP is currently located at the Sullivan Center for Lifelong Learning. The supports in the program include one that's very high on our list, and that's a National Trauma Skills Certification. You will see in that picture Dr. Greer, who's here with us today, receiving the award for having one of the first system-wide National Trauma Skills Certified programs in our country. All of our teachers receive that certification so that we know when students are coming to us how to work with them in such a way to help them to be able to cope with and deal with the behaviors, make sure those behaviors don't happen again, and that they're able to be stronger as a result of being in our program. We also purchased with Title IV funds our Ripple Effects Behavioral Modification Curriculum. That's new over the past 5 years. Those 2 are new over the past 4 years since I've been with the program and Dr. Greer, and we want to be sure that our students are not only getting that instruction and curriculum, but also the supports with behavior. So we have the instruction aligned to classes from the students' home schools, which you saw in our prior slide. We provide academic, career, and transition planning, life skills, self-discipline, social interaction experiences. We do substance abuse prevention, as well as provide pre-employment skill development, mental health counseling, of course, special education services and supports. And because some of our programs are housed on the Career Center campuses, we're able to have our students participate in our career and technology education programs. Our middle school program, our middle school program staffing, we have one coordinator at each site. So there are 3 sites, each has one coordinator. We share the counselor at 0.5. We share a social worker at 2.25, and behavior interventionist and instructional coach and secretary, staff, bookkeeper. So across MSAP and HSAP, we share a lot of staff, and they circulate around our sites. Each site has 3 teachers, 2 aides, and a third of a special education teacher. In mental health, our students at our MSAP sites are served by Greenville Mental Health. And, from the, I said Greenville Mental Health, yes. HSAP, the students are served by the Phoenix Center counselor. We have similar enrollment trends. You see a significant reduction, of course, during the pandemic, but right now, as of January, our enrollment of students served we've had so far this year, that number is higher than it typically is. We have supports in place to expand or to reduce the number of adults we have supporting the program with aides or additional facilitators as those numbers grow. So with our one coordinator, which the position is currently vacant, Mr. Tom Griffin, we have one counselor and that shared secretary bookkeeper. Full-time at HSAP, we have one special education teacher, we have 4 facilitators, 2 aides, and 2 regular education teachers. Our support includes the social worker, the transition coach, and the Prisma Health Clinic, which opened during the pandemic, and we have had a great deal of success having our students served at the Prisma Health Center on campus. And then we have our Greenville County Virtual Schools program. Mrs. Laura Hurd serves as the registrar for the program, and she is a direct report to me. This is not our Greenville County Schools virtual program that you have heard a lot about, the one we started in the pandemic. This is the original adjunct program, which has been in place since 2012. Over the years, we have served students in grades 7 through 12 from both our brick and mortar and some of our GCS virtual program students who need 1 or 2 additional courses. This adjunct program serves students by offering 49 high school courses in the core content areas. We offer world language, career and technology electives, and advanced placement courses. Those courses are built or added based on the request made for them, and we work with our schools directly with surveys annually to see what's needed. Our schools have used this virtual program to offer a course, and sometimes it's not available in their school's catalog. So a student who wants to take a course and it's not available, they can take it with our Greenville County Virtual School program. It's not done at the same time during the day, so they can take it after school, but it is definitely one that students have taken advantage of. We can offer a course for which the school does not have a qualified teacher temporarily, because that sometimes happens unexpectedly, and we are able to serve the students who have that course without them having to cancel it on their caseload. We are sometimes able to alleviate overload in overpopulated classes. Spanish comes to mind. We have more students who in the middle levels will request Spanish 1 than we have spaces or teachers for. So our Greenville County Virtual Schools program has a Spanish course, a high school Spanish course that we offer. We also use it to schedule students who are coming in from other schools or other districts that have course requirements that cannot be accommodated otherwise. So it's very unique, and we can sometimes take over classes when a teacher unexpectedly leaves as well. Of all of our middle schools, currently, our GCVSP courses are in 20 of the 21 middle schools. If they are served during the day, we have a labs setting for our students, and they're able to receive that instruction with the GCVSP certified teacher while under the support or facilitation of the lab manager. We're in 14 of our 15 high schools. We also support Greenville Early College, the Fine Arts Center, and our Bonds Career Center. From 2012 to 2022, there has been a very sharp growth in the desire for students to take these courses and take advantage. So we've grown from 6 teachers to 29 teachers, from 298 students to over 2,500 students enrolled over the course of a year. We've gone from offering only 25 courses to now offering 49. Our enrollment, as you can see, for the past 3 years has been steady and strong. We have also had our credits earned. Most of our students, as you can see, actually earn the credit they receive. They have a passing rate each year of over 90%, even during the pandemic. What's unique about our program is that since its inception, we have had teachers, every teacher we hire is expected to get the South Carolina Online Teaching Endorsement. So we do that along the way, and so far, almost all of our teachers, 24, have earned that endorsement, and those who are not are enrolled to do so. That is a requirement so that we are using the most effective practices of engaging our students in these courses, I think, which attributes to our high passing rate. And then we have the Satellite Diploma Program, which is an alternative opportunity for high school students to complete their diploma requirements. The supports are very similar with academic and career planning, our special education, our English language learner or multi-language learner support, career readiness certification. By the Satellite Diploma programs being on site with our career and technology centers, we're able to provide access to the CATE programs. Our students are engaged in paid and unpaid work experiences currently through Satellite Diploma. They have leadership and occupational skills training, as well as instruction on employability, what you do when you go into a workplace, networking and work maturity, skills evaluation, of course, technology competency, and we support effective resume creation and interview preparation. We're at Donaldson, Enery, Golden Strip, and J. Harley Bonds with our Satellite Diploma programs. Over the past few years, we've expanded that with our partnerships with Greenville Technical College, which includes our workshops and tours. They're pictured, our students this year visiting our Greenville Technical College program. We work with military recruiters. Many of our students have a desire or are considering the military as a career pathway, so we work with military recruiters. We host career fairs. We are working with Eckerd Recruiting, which provides stipends for our students to do those paid work internships throughout the year while they're in the Satellite Diploma program. And then we work with TD Bank, who's been very gracious to provide incentives for students, such as one was a drawing for their own HP laptop. They provide incentives for our students as they continue to work and achieve their goals to help us support them in their progress. So our enrollment for the Satellite Diploma program has remained fairly consistent through the pandemic because our students are able to work on-site and online. When you see the number of students enrolled, that's a total enrollment. That includes some students who come to us who, according to their transcripts, are 9th graders, 10th graders, 11th graders, or 12th graders. So they come to us with a different number of courses they need to graduate. And over the past few years, you see that we've had 83 in 20 to graduate. We had 54 graduates during the pandemic in 21, and this year so far we've had 18 graduates as of January 31st. Our staffing includes one coordinator, that is Dr. Stephanie Yarbrough, and one guidance counselor. Our instructional support is, again, that blend of the umbrella where we mix and share. Some of the special education teacher, instructional facilitators are hosted at each site. There's one per site. The 9 regular education teachers, 5 of whom also support HSAP. Again, we're blending those resources and supports. That's our instructional team, if you will. The supports include the Career Center, the GED prep. We recently added the WIN Workforce Readiness, and we'll go back to Work Keys preparation at Satellite Diploma, working with SC Works. We've offered forklift training, and we have 80 to work with the CNC training with Greenville Tech. We also provide mental health support, and we're working with Greenville Mental Health with that to secure that long-term coverage that we're currently doing at Lifelong Learning, but we're able to blend and support with our resources with other facilities. Lifelong Learning, that's our, I guess, our big step into the alternative programs. That's our step into the future. This logo and this motto was adapted by Mr. Chuck Welch because he said that the adult ed program is really a bridge towards your career. And so we've kept that on. Our lifelong learning is located primarily at the Sullivan Center. We do have satellite programs and supports at Greenville Tech's Brazier campus, at the Foothills Family Resources site, also at SC Voc Rehab. We recognize that not everyone can get to Sullivan, so we've expanded those sort of reaches and satellite supports to other facilities. Our program enables our students to improve their academic skills, to get a high school diploma or GED, to learn further, to get their digital skills, definitely to have that employability. We will share in just a second how much we do. We provide credential and career opportunities with the ASVAB for those entering the military. They are able to attain hair braiding licensure, the CDL training in conjunction with our GCS Transportation Department. We help with college applications, FAFSA, resume writing, all of those soft skills. We also operate a GED testing center for community sites such as the Greenville Literacy Association, United Ministries, and others. So our students can prepare out in the community and come to us for the Pearson certified testing site for their GED. We have, over the past few years, expanded our opportunities for evening and weekend services and for testing. We provide the WIN workforce readiness training and a transitioning again back to our work keys, and we do this also for Greenville County schools. A separate note about our English for speakers of other languages, or our ESOL program. We have one building which we have overgrown, and students are all throughout our building now. We typically have about 700 plus students enrolled from our community in our ESOL program, and they are able to come in, work on the GED, learn English as a second language. They're able to take citizenship classes for those that are seeking to attain U.S. citizenship, and we provide practice on WIN and work keys. With lifelong learning, our partnerships, that's really our bread and butter. We serve the community and we are part of the community in a very integral way. So our students, we partner with the organizations to be sure that if students need help paying fees for assessments, for those that are taking assessments in which we have support for that. We have job training, financial literacy, career readiness. We partner with Eckerd, with DSS, SC Works, Goodwill, Greenville Launch, AmeriCorps, United Way, of course. Voc Rehab is a very strong partner, Community Works, the Self-Help Credit Union, the Upstate Fatherhood Coalition, and Save Our Sons. So we have some strong partners, and this is not the whole list, but this is a very strong list of those that we work with very frequently. Our staffing, we have one director, Mr. Mike Thorne is our current director of lifelong learning. He has one secretary, one bookkeeper, a 0.8 bookkeeper, 1.9 coordinators, one receptionist, and 2.25 college and career navigators. The staff at Lifelong Learning is paid through our adult ed funds, and so we pay primarily on an hourly basis. And so when you see a 0.9, that's just a savings we're able to pull by working a schedule that's conducive to both the employee and our program. We again share the special education teacher and numerous hourly certified teachers based on the enrollment and the locations. We provide mental health by the PRN, who's there 1 day a week, a therapist from the Greenville Mental Health Adult Outpatient Team, Leo Newman. We also, Greenville Mental Health is currently working to hire a therapist to serve the program more often because we do have a lot of students who present needs and desire to participate. Recently, just on adult ed, during the pandemic, before the pandemic actually hit, we had transitioned to more of our online GED diploma programs, and that was a safeguard during the pandemic because otherwise our students may not have been able to complete and have the number of graduates we had last year. Successfully completed our transition from our technical assistance program with the state. We opened 2 new satellite sites for a total of 4 in our Greenville area. Our pandemic hindered us opening a couple, but we were able to expand still. We increased the number of nights we're opening, increased the number of evenings we were open, increased the number of students who post-test in a timely manner to make that TABE, the test for adult basic skill gains, from one level to the next. We increased our number of students who take the GED Ready, which is a practice test, in order to identify more quickly when they're able to take the official GED test. And with those efforts during the pandemic, the State Department of Education Adult Education Office awarded Greenville County Adult Education with a Stepping Up to a Plate award, stepping up to the plate for outstanding performance and initiatives during the pandemic. Outcomes and enrollment. We have, as you can see, students, we combine them with GED, Diploma, Satellite Diploma, ESL, all of those programs. You see the total enrollment and you see the number of graduates. Again, remember that some of our students come to us with a few credits and some come close to graduating. So this is a number that we were able to graduate each year, again, during the pandemic as well. But the college and career ready, the building a better graduate, we also wanted you to know that through our partnership, these are the numbers. Last year, 296 students were employed full-time or part-time through the partnerships with Adult Ed, and listed are the companies in which they went to work. So we're striving to accelerate that and have more partnership and more students coming in with the expectation that they are able to achieve the promise of high school diploma and some college credit, as well as industry certification, to be prepared as a better graduate. Are there any questions?
Dr. McDavid, I'm sure we've got some questions or comments. I'm going to ask one because I know it's something that wasn't in here that the board wanted to understand collectively, and that was, you talked about West Greenville, your referral, how people get into, how your students get into the program, but with the other programs, you didn't speak to that.
Okay.
So could you just run through those programs and kind of give a synopsis of how a student is placed, admitted, or otherwise referred into each one of those programs?
Thank you for that. West Greenville, we did share group homes. The students were placed in group homes, taken away from their homes due to abuse, neglect, or sometimes their own behaviors, and they are in the group homes. Juvenile Detention Center, they've created a criminal offense. And the middle school and high school alternative program, students are placed there based on behavioral infractions. We have a Greenville County Schools hearing officer who works with Kent Owens in our Student Services Department, and our students are, in lieu of expulsion, are placed in a middle school or high school alternative programs at times. We also, at the middle school level, take students who are referred by principals if the principal thinks that the experience would be better for a student on a temporary basis to receive the behavioral and or other supports. We also take some based on that, but the majority of our MSAP and HSAP students are there based on our hearing officer's referral to an alternative program. The Greenville County Virtual Schools Program is work with the guidance counselor and the school principals based on the individual graduation plan. So students are given that as an option as they're planning for their courses in the upcoming school year. The Satellite Diploma Program is an option, and we work with high schools across the district to find places for our students. Again, some students may not have shown back up at school, and we look to the Satellite Diploma Program. We work with Drew Perry, and if we find students who are not wanting to go back to the traditional brick and mortar, we offer a way that they can accelerate their attainment of a high school diploma. The students in the Satellite Diploma Program receive that. They receive a Greenville County Schools high school diploma, sometimes within the 4 years, other times within 5 years of their 9th grade year, and sometimes even afterwards. But they work on courses that are aligned to the Greenville County Schools curriculum, and they attain high school credits while they're in the Satellite Diploma Program. That is a referral process. We have an intake in which we include the parent, the student, and the receiving school to be sure that all of our goals are aligned for the time period that students will be working in Satellite Diploma. The lifelong learning program, we serve adult learners. We recruit in our community. We try to find students who are looking for work but have not attained their high school diploma or a GED. We recruit them into our programs. One of our billboards is, it's never too late to get a GED, and it's never too late to get your high school diploma. We recruit from the community very largely for that. Some of our program supports come in place from businesses who say, people that come to you and say, you don't have a high school diploma, you'll need this for this job. So we are that support. So it works two ways. They send to us and we send back to them. Thank you. Oh, is that the wrong slide up? Sorry.
Thanks, Lisa. You actually asked my question, but I wanted to get a further clarification on the alternative programs for middle and high school. I understand that there's a behavior referral there to some degree. However, do students who enter the alternative programs have an opportunity to go back to their, I guess, zoned school or their
Yes.
school? Okay. So
Our
it's not a
students-
permanent necessarily placement.
It is not. Thank you for asking that question. The students who are referred to the alternative program by the hearing officer have the opportunity. We instituted Ripple Effects, which is a tiered program, a step program, so that students have behavioral, attendance, and other goals they must meet in order to complete that before they go back. We also have the academics so that we keep them on track academically while they're working to go back. We work with the high schools or the home schools. We give them a week or two advance notice if a student is getting near that point of returning. We have a conversation, our transition specialist, along with their high school transition person that they've assigned to us, to have the conversation. This is what the student has done since he or she's been here. These are the pieces that we've put in place. This is what we've seen and what's been demonstrated. And the student is then transitioned back in a safe space, if you will, so that the school knows they're coming back and they're able to have conversations with parents and with the student with expectations, sometimes a behavioral contract, to say this is what's happening when you come back. But it is not a set number of days or a set period of time when they're assigned to us. They come and they work through the Ripple Effects behavioral improvement curriculum.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And then the second clarification I want to just, and I'm sorry, I may not be connecting all the dots. On slide number, oh goodness, it looks like 28, I believe, where it shows the enrollment, graduation for adult education, I think, or for the GED diploma, all of these different things. I'm looking at, obviously, a large number of students enrolled. It just seems like the graduate number is smaller, but is that because they aren't all coming in at the same level? I mean, this could be someone that, I mean, the enrollment they might eventually graduate, they just might be still in the 10th, let's just say a 10th grade curriculum or something like that. Is that?
That is exactly right,
Okay.
Mrs. Mosley. They are, if you think of it as a high school, some of our students are coming to us with 7 credits, and some are coming to us with 20 and just need a little bit more to get through. So they come at different places. We actually, in our system, in the adult education system, which is called LACES, we tier and show which ones are 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade. So this is the total enrollment, and that varies because we can get in as many 9th graders today as we get in 12th graders today. It depends on the students coming in, but we work with them. It takes them usually shorter than a year to complete a year's worth of work. If they are able to accelerate, depending on their needs and depending on their pretest. So yes, the enrollment is high, and that includes our GED, those who are coming to us with so few credits they would go ahead and accelerate before the time, in a shorter period of time. Those who are seeking to attain their already partially attained Greenville High School diploma, and our ESL, which many of our students in the ESL program are working on the GED as well as learning the English language. So yes, you see a larger enrollment, which is sort of like the enrollment of our whole program umbrella school.
Okay, I think that's all I have for now. Thank you.
It wouldn't be unusual for students to go into adult ed and have 0 units of credit. It's not as common as it once was. Several years ago, you'd have students that left in elementary, middle school, or junior high, much older students coming in, but you still have students show up at adult ed, even ones that left high school They don't have any units of credit. Most of them don't want to go through the regular diploma route. I don't know what the percentages are. I'm sure Dr. Greer probably knows, but they're generally the minority of the students enrolled in adult ed, because even with a shortened process to get units of credit, it's a rather lengthy process. Most of them want to come in, prep for the GED, and take the GED. What's happened in the last probably 3 to 4 years, the GED has become much more difficult for students to pass. So you're seeing some combination things, but what you do see there is us moving from about 10% graduation in those programs to about 14%. Higher, lesser graduates, but lesser graduates out of a smaller overall number, so about 14%. The other thing, we don't have that in here. I'm sure there is a national statistic, and we'll look to see if we can find it to send to you about adult ed, what percentage pass. If you look, for example, in our alternative programs like Satellite Diploma, if you look nationally at alternative programs, if you get a graduation rate above about 25%, that's generally considered a successful program, because you're talking about those people that's populated by those that are the least likely to ever graduate. So some of this is having a kind of a frame of reference to see, well, that doesn't, 25%, that doesn't sound very good when you got graduation rates in the 80s and 90s, but for that population, actually a pretty good graduation rate. And then as Dr. David pointed out, there are students who come to adult ed, but with a goal short of GED or diploma for some other trainings and so forth.
Dr. Royster, Ms. Goodwin-Caldwell.
Thank you, Dr. McDavid, for this presentation. I used to teach the GED program in family literacy, which I wish that we still had in this district. But I wanted to ask you on the middle school program, why do we only have a .33 special ed person and not a whole one?
If we have, we look at our numbers of students who need special education support. And in a normal year, we begin by splitting the personnel between multiple sites. So the person is .33, they may serve all 3 MSAPs. So one person will go to all 3 sites, or one person may serve an MSAP and part of SDP, or an MSAP and part of HSAP. So we look at the students and where they are. In a year where the number of students who require special education services goes up, we send a request to Dr. Turner, and pre-pandemic, we needed to add a full position in order to meet the needs of the student. We will always have enough staff, try to have enough staff to meet the needs of the students who are there, but not all the students who are there require special education services. So of our 50 who are currently at Donaldson, for example, only 5 or 10 may need special education support. So we have a teacher who goes to provide that. That teacher has a load of maybe 10 or 12. That's not full time. So that teacher goes to another site to serve another 10 or 12 students to get to a full caseload. But the students
there. So
there.
that's enough right now?
For right now, yes. And
I think kind of the short answer to that is MSAP and HSAP staffing, not just special ed part. It has to be flexible during the year, because some of that depends on the vast majority of those students are set there by the hearing officer.
Right.
So as that enrollment goes up, we start the year knowing that in most years it's going to reach this level. Well, some years it goes above that level. So during the course of the year, we may have to add part-time positions to staff MSAP and HSAP, but if their IEP calls for services, we provide the services, however many people that requires.
Okay. One last question. What are the schools that are not served in the virtual school program? Because I saw you had 20 of 21, 14 of 15. Mm-hmm. What school?
I'll get the names of those. I'll get the names of those schools and share them with you. It could be, in some cases, the schools are able to provide the courses that students need, and so they're not doing the on-site blended courses. but I'll get you the names of those schools.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Goodman Caldwell. Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Ms. Wells. This is a lot of great information. I really appreciate it. Could we go to the chart on page 3 that has the different programs? That one. So can you just help remind me, are all of these considered schools by the definition of State Department of Education? Do they have beds codes, or is it just West Greenville School that is?
West Greenville School is the only one that has a beds code. The others are considered programs.
So if you're a student at that's affiliated with the group homes, then are you counted in your homes? Like, where are you counted in a school's reporting?
For the high school, for example, those who are in the TR area at a group home, they will be counted as part of TR's Travelers Rest High School in terms of their data. And the accountability for the payment goes back to the home district, but the student literally resides in Greenville County Schools.
So with group homes specifically, you're counted where the home
Is located.
physically is located.
Yes.
Okay. And the satellite diploma program, those students?
The students in Satellite Diploma Program are still affiliated with their high school that they came from, but when they enter Satellite Diploma, they are considered adult education students, and we count them in LACES, so they're no longer part of Power School. When they earn their high school diploma, we then attach them back to that high school that they, that's the sending high school, receiving high school, and make sure that the diploma matches where the credits were earned.
Any diploma earned from adult education is generated by the student's last school of attendance in Greenville County.
Okay.
If that school no longer exists, or it was not a school in Greenville County, they get a Greenville High School diploma.
Okay. And you mentioned group homes here. I thought I saw in the paper that there's some questions about DJJ having a site that may have to move or close. Are they counted as, in this group, are they counted as group home students if they're?
And we count them as group home students. So Dr. Larry Ertzberger serves and visits and provides staffing for the students at the Department of Juvenile Justice as well. It's not a group home, but it's definitely a part of that service where students reside separately from their house of residence.
If DJJ moves forward with its recommendations to close a site to move those students to another part of the state, how does that affect? Are they still our students if they're if they're moved, then wherever their bed is, they're now a student of that district?
Yes.
Now, that might be two different things.
Okay.
DJJ itself operates a school system.
Okay.
For John G. Richards, Willow Lane, the statewide facilities. The detention center site that we referenced earlier, that Dr. McDavid talked about, that's actually on the campus of the law enforcement center here.
Okay.
It's an overnight facility for juveniles that have been charged, and there are some people housed there as juveniles more long-term. It's temporarily been closed by the county because they can't staff it. They get some sort of reimbursement from the state for operating it, I believe. But we're required, if a student's physically housed in the boundaries of the district, to serve that student no matter where the student comes from, and then we get a payment that doesn't always cover the total amount of the cost, but we get a payment from the sending school district. We also, in turn, if we have a student that is assigned to or admitted to a youth facility in another county, we're required to forward, based on a formula, an amount of funds to that county.
Okay.
Statewide, the largest number of group homes are in the upstate, really Oconee and Greenville County, and along the coast. There are a few in other places, but the predominant number of them are in those two upstate counties, or maybe one or two in Pickens, and then along the coast of South Carolina. So we have a large number of out-of-district students in residential treatment facilities, group homes, the detention center, all of those sort of fitting under that same umbrella that Dr. McDavid was talking about.
Okay, so it's the county detention center that's closing its It's youth services.
The juvenile facility
Got it.
is temporarily closed. Now, temporary has not been defined to us, so we're not real sure when it might reopen.
And those students currently are considered Greenville County students.
We
That's-
had 1 or 2 full-time teachers at the detention center.
Yes.
We have, there is actually a classroom over there.
And those students now are not in Greenville County.
No,
They're somewhere
they're
there
not. They're
elsewhere.
being served either in Union County or Richland County, if I remember correctly.
And those school districts are now supporting the students that were Greenville County students.
Yeah, if, in fact, some of those students were actually Greenville County residents, there were some students housed there that are not Greenville County residents.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Without objection, I'm going to extend for 15 minutes. Ms. Stiles.
Charlotte and Dr. Royster, I think it's very commendable when you go out into the community and you see a billboard from Greenville County Schools that says it's never too late to graduate. I think that speaks volume for our vision and what we believe and that we care about our community. So I'm very, very proud of that. And just looking at slide 29 and for the, we talked about graduation and maybe our rates are not as high as we'd like, but yet they are successful for this program. But if you look at the number of students who are going on to be employed, if you look at the great jump from 2019 to 2020, that's quite impressive. And so I think that lifelong learning is beyond getting a degree, it's opportunities for employment. And at a time where many companies are struggling to find employees, I think this is also a phenomenal program. And I'm just looking at the names of the companies who are involved with this job placement. And I'm very proud of them for being a part of that partnership. And I would just like to close by saying that I hope that we will continue to build those companies and to provide those opportunities for those participants in the lifelong learning. So kudos, great job. And I'm proud that we're sending positive messages to our community that we care and that education is important even into adulthood. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stiles.
Mr. Suddeth.
Looking very briefly at our students with behavior problems, what programs are they eligible or are they associated with of all of our programs that we have?
Of all the programs, I will say that our most dedicated to behavioral challenges are the MSAP and HSAP middle school and high school alternative programs because they are placed not due to an academic cause, but due to a behavioral reason. The student may have been recommended for expulsion from the traditional brick and mortar middle or high school, or by recommendation from the principal of the middle school to come to the program. So that program has that intense focus. Also, our West Greenville School, our students have IEPs with significant emotional, not always behavior, but emotional and or behavioral disabilities, and West Greenville School is the least restrictive environment.
You go to West Greenville, I would have to have an IEP.
Yes, that states that is where you need to be. Mm-hmm.
In these other two programs, MSAP and the high school program, they all have a hearing.
Most of the students are placed based on the hearing. However, the middle school principals are able to make recommendations for students to attend the middle school alternative program outside of a hearing officer's recommendation.
Well, the hearing mostly is for whether I'm going to be expelled or I'm going to be put in another program.
Yes, sir.
For those that do very difficult problems, such as drugs or weapons, then we don't put them in school, do we?
We serve students with drugs and weapons offenses in our high school and middle school alternative programs. Yes, sir. Our staffing allows us to provide additional supports, and the hearing officer, as well as the team making the recommendation, would feel that they would be appropriately served there. There are some, when you mention weapons or drugs, there are some, obviously, that carry with them a criminal offense, and so those students may still be served in other programs with us, but perhaps not the middle school or high school alternative program. But we do have some, yes.
To clarify that, a student in possession of a firearm is expelled for 1 calendar year, and they're not served anywhere in the district unless we're compelled by their IEP to provide at-home services for special needs.
That's the only one?
That's the only one that it is an automatic, not the judgment of the hearing officer. The hearing officer's only decision there is, did they in fact commit the infraction? That's an automatic out-of-school expulsion in accord with federal and state law. That's the only one that is automatic.
Automatic.
We do have some others that are repeat offenses, or perhaps they've committed some particularly violent act. They might very well be expelled without service from HSAP or NSAP. That's a decision of the hearing officers.
Hard time, Dr. Royster, when we will not let the student attend any of our programs.
That is correct.
How long do they usually stay out when they're putting them on these programs?
If they're not attending a program at all, how long do they stay out, Mr. Sutton?
They got called for an offense and they've been put into either MSAP or high school.
If they've been placed in MSAP or HSAP, they have a process. They have to work their way out. In general terms, Dr. Greer, a middle school student's going to be there around 45 days.
It really does depend, and some of them progress. They have a level system at the middle.
Sorry, can you come up to the microphone so folks can hear you? I apologize.
Good morning. It's a level system at the middle school program, and so it requires them to work through a curriculum, and also, of course, they have to not have infractions as well. And so it's based on their behavior and their ability to work through the level system at the middle school. So it depends on how long that is. Some students are very motivated, some are not, and so we have to feel confident when we return them to school that they can be successful. So that's part of that transition that Dr. McDavid talked about earlier. At the high school program, it's very similar. It's not quite the same level system, but there's a set of expectations that the students have to reach in order to earn their way back to school. And so what we tell the students and we tell the parents is how long you're here depends on how much you work to address the issues that you have, because certainly we don't want to send you back to school for you to just return back to us. And when I first got here, that was one of the issues, students going back to school and then getting in trouble immediately and being sent back to the program. So we're trying to make sure that they're prepared to go back so that they can be successful this day.
So 45 days, most students have the opportunity to earn their way back within 45 days.
Right.
Some a little bit shorter than that, and
Yes.
others a little bit longer than that.
Right. And the reason we stay away from saying a time frame really is because we don't want students to feel that they're being held beyond their time, because it gets less productive at that point, and that time frame just kind of sticks in their head. So we try to stay away from that, but that's generally about the time frame for most students.
When they're assigned, do they know at that point how long they're going to be in that facility? Or do we simply say that will depend upon how you perform in that facility?
Depends on how they perform.
And if most of them perform well, then they don't stay more than 45 days in the middle school.
Roughly, yes.
In the high school, if I've got a problem and I had it in the first semester, and it's a serious problem, then I may have to spend the rest of the year.
You may have to spend the rest of the year.
But do they know that before? Or do they just simply say, we don't tell them this is specifically how long you gotta stay. What we're telling them is this, I'm gonna put you there, and how long you stay there depends upon how well you perform there.
We're very clear in the expectations for returning. The school knows it, the parents and the students know the expectations of what they have to do to earn their way back. And the time frame for that is dependent on the student.
If I'm a parent and I want to appeal, who do I appeal to? I'm talking about after the hearing. If they don't agree with the placement, where does their parent go after that?
Any appeal of a hearing officer's decision, as you recall, the hearing officers are your designees. That has to come to the Board of Trustees.
Would not go to the superintendent, because the hearing officer is the superintendent's representative?
The hearing officer is the board's representative. So any appeal of a hearing officer's decision comes to the board.
the board hire these hearing officers, or does the administration, the district administration?
District administration employs the hearing officers, but they operate at your direction, and they receive training from Mr. Webb in the procedural and legal manner in which they should conduct hearings. Their judgment is independent. The schools bring a recommendation to them for expulsion. They hear the evidence, and they make a decision in consideration of precedent. In other words, what decisions they've made in similar situations in the past, and in accord with the policy, then they make a determination of what should happen with that student. If a parent disagrees with that, they can appeal it to the board, and they are so informed both in the hearing and in writing when the decision of the hearing officer is officially communicated to them.
Which of these programs, Dr. Royster, do we have an assigned officer? Not a hearing officer, but
A school resource
a school
officer?
resource officer.
We have off-duty law enforcement officers assigned to each of those locations that we employ as a side job. We're currently pursuing the employment of an SRO through the new grant process in the state, but right now they're being served by, as the zone patrols are, by off-duty officers working it as a side job.
On the site.
Yes, sir.
So whether it be a MSTAP or whether it be a high school, we have a police officer presence on the ground.
Yes, sir. If for some reason we can't employ one that day, they share one with another facility.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Silas. Ms. Leventis Wells. Ms. Leventis Wells, can you turn your microphone on?
I get called down on that often. West Greenville, the preparation for employability credential. So there could be students that would receive that and not the traditional diploma, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and the reason being is because they're not able or capable, or they haven't reached the level, but may do it one day?
Students who are receiving an employability credential have specific guidelines in their IEP that states that is the credential that they're working towards.
Okay.
Other students are receiving the traditional diploma.
Okay, and that does not prevent them from being, that helps them to be employable for certain job opportunities, correct?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Is there a way, Tracy's up here.
Can I change the
Yes,
places?
please.
Dr. Oyster's nodding at me. So the employability credential, an IEP team decides if a student doesn't have the ability to get the standard diploma. So that's typically looked at, it can't be looked at before 9th grade, okay? So anytime in the high school, if they're not able to get those standard 24 credits, and the students who have to go to West Greenville, their behavior impedes their ability to participate in some of those classes to get those credits. If they can't obtain those credits, the IEP team can put them on a track to get an employability credential. They still get 24 standard credits, except they are different. They might get functional math or a different kind of English class than the English 1, 2, 3, or 4. They're also required to have 360 work hours, and there's a technology portfolio, there's a technology class, there's a lot of other components that go with that. But definitely it is about ensuring that they have a means to be employable once they leave Greenville County schools.
Is there any way down the line that these students would be able to go to Greenville Tech?
Well,
into a program of some type of diploma?
we do have some students that have completed the CNA program through Greenville Tech. And so certainly that is, I think, an individual institution, whether they would be willing to accept. You may recall in my past when I was in Horry County that Horry Georgetown Tech did accept the credential that came from Horry County Schools. So it would be our hope that we would be able to have partnerships with technical colleges all across the upstate to take this standard diploma, or excuse me, standard credential now from the state. That was part of the reason we wanted it to be a uniform credential of all of South Carolina.
Right. And the reason I asked is because I thought we did have that at Greenville Tech when I was there, but I wasn't sure now with diploma credits and so forth, how that is actually working out, and if we have established a transition where our students could.
There's not a formal transition at this point. They certainly can consider different programs, but right now I believe the CNA program is the only one.
Well, I mean, I'm pleased that we're able to assist so that these students are able to be employable.
Hopefully we can have more.
Sorry?
I said hopefully we can have more.
Exactly. I hope so too. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Logan. Also, I have this big, I don't know, it just bothers me that the state only approves a student that we only get credit for a student that graduates within 5 years. When so many people learn at different levels, and it takes some people a little more time than others. And if a student is 6 years or 7 years, then they just are not even counted, which really is disheartening because they have achieved that diploma, and they don't count in our numbers. And I'm just glad that we don't give up on them. And I think that's very important, that we never give up on our students, and that no matter what, even if we don't get credit, we give them credit for going the distance. So I am an advocate for alternative schools. I do have one question about when a student is expelled, and I know we have virtual, right, for them to take accordingly.
The virtual schools program that is existing for grades K through 12 that operates, we started during the pandemic, that is not.
That's totally different.
That's totally different. That is not designed for students who are expelled.
I've got one more minute, and then.
Not objection, I'm gonna extend for 10 minutes. I've got another speaker.
Okay, so my concern is when a student goes to alternative school, depending on what high school they're in, on the block schedule, whether it's high school or maybe middle school, I know they're not on block. What happens when that student's in a class that isn't offered at the alternative school that they're attending? What happens to that? What happens to that student? Because I know we've run into that situation prior or before, and I just want to make sure that, how do we deal with that?
We try our best to match the curriculum. Ingenuity has been a tool because they offer many classes that we then can transition a student into and then back to their home school. But some classes are very unique, and we do not have the system in place to support students in every course that is taken. And that opportunity, we give them another course that they can take that helps them towards their graduation, and they can work in another course. And then when they get back to their home school, they can retake that unique course that we're not able to offer.
Do have some asynchronous virtual courses for alternative program students, correct?
We do offer.
To Dr. McDavis, there's just no way to have every course that we offer.
I just worry that when a child, and this is not in the dictionary, this word, it's my word, when they do stupidness and it's in the middle of a semester and they're unable to complete that, then that means they'll have to start over again when they are sent back to their home school. Is that correct? That's what you're basically saying, if it's not offered.
If it's not offered, or if the teacher, if it's sometimes very unique and in small individual cases, the teacher may allow the student to participate via Google Classroom, but the students need to be in class receiving the seat time and the direct instruction so that we can certify they are prepared for that course.
Thank you both. Thank you so much.
Ms. Leventis Wells, Ms. Morrison Fair.
Thank you. My questions will be concerning that middle school student, and I really have a passion for that student. What is our maximum number that we can handle at West Greenville and also at your other programs, the maximum number of students that we can handle?
We have devised a program that has a 15-to-1 ratio, and with the number of classrooms we have at each site currently, we have 3 classrooms. So at one time, there may be 45. If we have additional students, which has happened here recently, we sometimes find another spot for 15 more kids to go so that we can then go up to 60. Thus far, at one time, we've not served above 60, but that is given your 15-to-1 ratio in our policy that we try to serve.
And my next question is, I have a question that's often given to me with parents. The question is, what do I do with my students? So does a parent have an opportunity to request that their middle schooler be a part of that program before their student gets to that almost end of the rope?
Yes, parents do have the opportunity to have that conversation with the homeschool. And as I referenced earlier, sometimes the schools will help make that recommendation. The referral has to come from the school, but the parent can initiate.
So they would work with the principal?
Yes.
To get that student in. And of course, the student that has an offense gets first preference.
Yes.
And another, I don't know if this is your area, but I had a question on what process do we use to recruit additional businesses that may want to give opportunities to students in this program?
Okay, Dr. Gritter, you want to speak to that?
The middle school program?
No, the high school.
Or the high?
Either one.
Any program? Well, we reach out to different businesses in the community, our facilitators at the school level. Also, of course, Lifelong Learning actively is recruiting for partners all the time. But we work with different entities in the community, such as Launch Greenville, and certain businesses that want to provide services to students to bring people in. And we have some mentoring programs that are community-based. So we're really open to any partnerships that bring more opportunities and more resources to students. So we are actively engaged in courting those people in the community who are open to providing services.
So if I have small business people that want to be part of this program, I just need to direct them to you?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Right.
ma'am.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison. If there aren't any other speakers, I do have one. You got another one? Make it quick so I can have one.
It will
Mr.
be
Sutton.
quick. Which of these programs are the personnel salaried and which one are the hourly paid?
I'm sorry, Ms. Sudduth, could you, the background noise, could you say that again?
We have in this, which one of those programs are the personnel salaried, or is there any program where a person is hourly paid?
There are mixture in all those programs of people that are on a full-time salary and people that are being paid by the hour to teach. Because they're demand-driven programs, the most cost-effective way to do that is to hire people to meet the immediate need for the teaching. In some cases, those are full-time teachers in other locations who are doing that to make extra income. That would probably be the case in adult ed with a lot of those positions. That may also be true in MSAP and HSAP, or it may simply be someone who doesn't want to work full-time. So it's a mix. It's whatever works most effectively for the system, and that's the process that gives us the greatest flexibility.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Sutton. A broad question and a specific one. So we're looking at effectiveness of, we're constantly looking at effectiveness of these programs. Unfortunately, I mean, there's some numbers in the program, but you really aren't showing us in this presentation how we've evaluated the effectiveness and what that looks like. So what I would like to see as a follow-up, perhaps Dr. Royster, is just, I'd like to understand the metrics for effectiveness of each one of these programs. So what are we looking at to say this program is doing what it needs to do, it's effective in what it's doing, how are we evaluating it? Because for the specific is Satellite Diploma Program is a program that we put in place several years ago. It changed and morphed a little bit when the state changed how they were calculating graduation rate. We moved that to an adult program, but when we implemented that and put it at the Career Center and located it where we did, we said we were doing that so that we could engage students with Career Center opportunities, so we could get them some additional skills. And so You know, what I can't tell from this presentation is, while I can see that we've had some graduates and I can see, you know, we've had some success, I don't really know what that looks like in terms of maybe those students that didn't graduate also got some career center opportunity. Maybe they got a certification, or maybe this program's not very effective in the way it's working and we need to rethink whether or not it needs to be at the career center or whether it should be connected somehow back to the high school. So just as a follow-up to this presentation, I just would like to kind of understand, you know, from if Dr. McCrary's department has evaluated these programs for effectiveness, kind of just get some sense of what that looks like for all of these programs.
Thank you, we will.
Dr. Royster? All right, thank you. So with that, we're going to move on. Thank you so much for the presentation. It's very helpful. We're going to move on to item 3.02, letter to State Board of Education regarding adoption of instructional materials for science. There is a recommended motion from the administration. Do I have a maker of the motion before we begin presentation discussion?
I'd like to make the motion to approve the letter requesting action by the State Board of Education regarding adopted instructional materials for grades K through 5 science.
I have a motion. Do I have a motion and a second. So Dr. Royster, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about this item.
Thank you, Ms. Wells. Before I turn it over to Mr. McCoy, just in summary, what we're asking for here is an endorsement by the board to send to the State Board of Education requesting that additional science kit materials be added to the state adopted list. They're on, for lack of a better term, the optional list. If they're on the optional list, we have to pay for them. If they move to the state adopted list, the state pays for them. And you'll see within the presentation or within the background information there, if a certain number of districts representing a certain number of students ask for these to be added to the adopted list, they will, without, as I understand it, without question. They'll be added. Our academics division believes that some of the best kits are those that are not on the adopted list, they're on the optional list. Mr. McCoy?
Yes, I don't have a whole lot to add to that, Dr. Royster. That was a great summary. Typically, when we go through adoptions from the state, we have 10 to 12 textbooks that we can look at for adoption purposes. There are 12 on the list for elementary this year. Only 3 of them, however, had their science kits included on the core list, which means the state would pay for them. So we're just asking this letter that the others that were on the supplemental list, as Dr. Royster said, be included in the core so that our teams truly have 12 vendors to look at to make the best decision. And they may end up choosing one of the ones that are the 3, but we need the option to be able to look at all 12. And as most of you know, the new science standards really can't be taught without kits. So we can't really just choose a textbook without any hands-on kits to go with it. So we're just hoping with this, there'll be some other, we know we have some other districts who are also signing on to petition some of these move from supplemental to core so that they'll pay for it for us.
Do you have any questions on that? Mr. Sutton.
What is the distinction between textbooks and kits?
So the textbooks, Mr. Seth, would be like the traditional textbooks you're used to seeing, either print textbooks or digital. The science kits are actually kits of materials that kids would and teachers would do experiments with to reinforce the science concepts.
So the letter that Mr. Meek is sending to them talks about the code of the state says that approved list of textbooks. It doesn't mention a kit in that code. Yep. But where are we transferring from textbooks to kits?
Yes, sir.
Or is that not a problem?
Yes, sir, that's not a problem. Anymore these days, vendors and who textbook vendors include things with their textbooks, like sometimes it's software, it could be science kits. So it's not an issue. They just classify all that under the textbook adoption.
Not a problem, it's fine. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else have a question? So, Mr. McCoy, I have one question. Just how did they come up with what they put on the core versus the optional list?
So from what we can understand, and there's been a little bit of difficult getting some communication this time, but from what we can understand is that there is teams, there is a committee that's initially set up at the state level when they go out to look at all the vendors who may apply to be on that list. And it may be 20 vendors. And then that committee narrows that down to X amount of vendors, how well it ties the standards or not. So best we can understand what we got from the State Department is that there was a committee that chose certain kits to be on the core list and certain kits to be on the supplemental list.
We know who was on that committee?
There's a state list out there somewhere. We're usually represented, our team is usually represented on that, that initial adoption process, not so much the kit part of it though.
All right, so I have a motion on the floor to approve the letter requesting action by the State Board of Education regarding adopted instructional materials for grades K-5 science. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So the motion carries. Mr. Meek, that completes the instruction portion of the meeting for today, and I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Ms. Wales, for filling in for Mr. Sailors today. Before we go to section 4, or on section 4, without objection, I'd like to move item 4.03 to be item 4.01 to discuss that item first. Is there any objection? Hearing none. Mrs. Doolin, it's yours.
Thank you, Ms. Dillon. We've heard now for several weeks about an emphasis in the state budget on teacher salary increases. Very late last week, we saw the first details of that proposal. Many of you have probably read some of the reports about that. And based on people that I've spoken with, and even the things that I've seen about it, would lead one to believe that it's a $4,000 pay raise for all teachers. That's not an accurate picture, though. Now, part of this, you have to kind of forget about what you already knew about school finance. It takes this new amount of funding, the new amount of funding for the coming year, and puts it into a newly proposed formula, which I'm going to talk about a little bit, but I'm not going to go in great detail about it because the detail about it, to a degree, distracts from understanding the bigger picture. It establishes a 75-25 split statewide. What do you all already know about EFA? It's based on a 70-30 split. And it also has within it a weighted pupil unit formula, but forget about the EFA weights because it's different weights, many of which were included in EFA are not included in that. And it's only part of the formula by which it determines how many teachers you ought to have. That's the only role that weighted pupil unit formula has. Now, if you apply this formula, it results in much less than 75% actually being covered by the state, leaving the remainder of it to be funded by local school districts. Now, it's also important to note the proviso that describes this and sets out this allocation formula. It very clearly says, if you read down in it, you don't have to use this to increase teacher salaries if you're already above the state minimum. Now, that's not really been, I don't think, widely known or reported. In fact, I believe many of our legislators, when we've already contacted them about this, that was not perhaps their understanding of it either. Now, right now, what we're about to talk about has come from the Ways and Means Committee of the House, and will go to the House floor for debate, discussion, the week of the 14th. So a week from now, full week from now. So keep in mind, you don't have to use the 4,000, but I think most people believe, in fact, if you looked at the reports in your School Boards Association clippings yesterday, that would probably be the belief that you came away with. All right, Ways and Means Committee's adopted a proviso to take all the new funds for education, the bulk of the new funds, it's not all of them, but it's the bulk of them, and apply them to a new funding formula. The proviso creates this new formula based on the number of teachers needed to attain a statewide student-teacher ratio of 11.2 to 1, because in their analysis, that's what they've determined is kind of the average now. Now, that doesn't mean a teacher's going to have 11 students. If you look down there, see who it includes. It includes all those people listed. You'll also notice there are a whole lot of people that aren't listed in there, as if you could operate a school or a district without a principal or an assistant principal or custodians or bus drivers or any other people, or SROs. Doesn't include those people. There are some in there that aren't paid on the teacher salary schedule. For example, nurses, OT and PT, occupational and physical therapists, are often not paid on the teacher salary schedule. Some places they are, some places they're not. All right, so there's this theoretical 11.2 to 1 to use to spread the new salary money. All right. To reach that 11.2 to 1, that is 67,223 people, teachers. Now remember, teachers include all those people that were listed the slide before. The amount that would cost to fund a $4,000 raise. Because if you accord a $4,000 raise, every time we accord a raise, we have to pay the fringe benefits on it. Right now, it's it's 32 cents above the dollar. So for every dollar in pay, it's actually $1.32. Well, what's also included in the new information we've received within the last week or so is an increase in the fringe benefit package cost. So what you're seeing right now, that's what a $4,000 raise plus the new fringe would cost statewide for 67,223 positions. Now, if you go look at the formula on which their entire program is based, the 75-25, 75% of that is $266,203,080. The new money, the total new money actually allocated from the state to districts is $196,032,747, which makes that number short by $70 million. The district share, which would be 25%, now this is on average over the state, 25% plus the shortfall is $158.9 million. Now, our share, as distributed to us last week, in initial information about the proviso, $19 million. So if we were to look at that from the perspective of providing a $4,000 raise and fringe for all teachers in our district, $27 million, $8 million short. That's not a step increase. That's to provide $4,000. If you provided $4,000 and fringe and the step increase, and I've not yet seen anything that says you don't have to provide a step increase, that's a total of $33 million. We're $14 million short. Now, as I said at the outset, you can't run a school or a district without support personnel. One thing that's glaringly missing from that count of people, every kindergarten, every pre-K has to have an aide in it. We have aides in special needs classrooms because of IEP considerations. Aides aren't included in that. No personnel outside of that list is included in it. And we realize and recognize, and this board has always realized and recognized, that every employee in this district contributes to the success of our students. And this administration, the previous administration, and this board and every previous board has recognized that through giving increases to employees throughout the district, no matter what job they were in. To do an employee pay raise, 18% with the fringe, the annual step increase, and this increase in the employer health care premium, and that's other fringe, there's a 1% increase to retirement. That's $37 million. Doesn't include personnel for growth. That slide should have had, where's the 2% for all? Okay. All right, here's what it doesn't include that we've already talked about. And one thing that we didn't talk about. No personnel for growth. We've been growing about 1,000 students a year. That's about 40 FTEs. For this coming year, if it were to be 40 again, that's $3.3 million more dollars for the coming year. Doesn't include required step increases. Includes nothing for teachers not on steps. It's just this sum of money. Includes no operational cost. As a note, we got the lowest administrative overhead cost of any district in South Carolina, less than a penny of a dollar. All right, here's the summary that includes all employees. Step for all teachers and an updated fringe rate. Just a step. This doesn't have anything to do with them getting $4,000 or any lump sum, just a step. And the updated fringe, $11.4 million. We have for several years used this second scenario. The cost of a step or 2%, whichever is higher, for all teachers who qualify, and including the updated fringe. That's $13.4 million. To pick up the group of teachers who go off the end of the schedule, we have 32 steps to go. When they go off the end of the schedule, that's another $0.7 million. To provide all of our employees a 2% raise. 2%. Nowhere near the rate of inflation currently, but a 2% raise. That's $6.6 million. So if the district, if this body adopted the position very similar to what we've done in the past, where every employee would receive at least a 2% raise, teachers would receive their step or 2%, whichever is the greater, because some of the steps are less than 2%. That's a cost of $20.7 million just to do that. So what I wanted to make sure is that everyone understood, despite how it might be presented, being discussed, or being understood, there is not money in there to provide teachers a $4,000 pay raise. There would be, in our $19 million share, just about enough to do what I just described. Now, again, it would require some local effort beyond that, and we'd also have to provide some local effort beyond that to address growth. But $19 million comes just under being able to do this for all employees. And I felt it was important that you all know this because it seems to be commonly misunderstood throughout the state in talking with other superintendents, that generally people are believing this is a $4,000 raise for all teachers. And $4,000 for every teacher, if it's just for the teachers, costs way more than $4,000 for every teacher. It's well above $5,000 because you've got to pay fringe. And all of those large revenue sources, at least for this increase, are rolled into this. EFA, EIA Fringe, state aid to districts. Now, it is our understanding we would still receive the funds we currently receive that are derived by those formulas, but not this increase. I wanted to make sure that we presented that to you, had an opportunity to ask questions about it, try to present it in a way that's most easily understood, because I'm sure you will get questions about it, and to provide you some information that hopefully can generally easily answer people's questions in the community, or our teachers that may ask you about it. That's our presentation about it. Certainly we'll try to answer any question to our ability to do so.
This presentation is now on Board Docs along with the presentation.
Do you have to reboot?
Just have to refresh, yeah.
Refresh.
And it also included in there is the presentation that superintendents received last week from State Revenue and Fiscal Affairs. And you can see in that presentation, not only our share, the share for other districts, and it proportionally generally affects everybody the same way.
So, Dr. Royster, according to what they are, what the House, what they're discussing, what are they, when you look at just the teachers, the $4,000 per teacher, and they're saying that they would only have 11.2 students per teacher, is that correct? Is that what they're looking at?
Well, they base the 11.2 on all of those positions: classroom teachers, special ed teachers, pre-K teachers, kindergarten teachers, retired teachers. Not sure why they include retired teachers other than I'm assuming that to mean working retirees. Library media specialists, librarians, guidance counselors, speech therapists, ROTC instructors, school nurses, OT, PT, orientation mobility instructors, audiologists, social workers, and psychologists. Includes no one else. And if you look statewide, their calculations show there's an employee in those categories for about every 11.2 students. Now, that obviously doesn't mean class sizes anywhere in this state are 11.2 to 1.
That's what
there might be some there are obviously some special ed classrooms that have that size, but they're not regular classrooms in the state that are at 11 to 1.
Yes, sir, and that's what concerns me. They really didn't look at the big picture. And were any of the superintendents involved in this discussion?
Not to my knowledge.
So, well, that's interesting. And did they ask any educators or teachers what their opinions were?
I mean, not to my knowledge.
Yes, sir. So what would end up happening if we adopted this, if this was passed, then we would have to ask for a millage rate increase. And I am not going to do that. These people are suffering as it is. And to ask for a millage increase at this time when small businesses are going under, and those are the ones that would be hit the hardest.
Well, now, to make clear, there is no requirement to give teachers the $4,000 raise. There is no requirement to do that. That's simply not been publicized. The proviso clearly states that districts who pay in excess of the state minimum use its allocation at its discretion. But it is misleading for teachers to be led to believe there's money there being funded 100% by the state to provide a $4,000 per teacher raise. It is not there.
Okay.
It will not do that.
You're exactly right. So we're just presented this 5 minutes ago when you brought this up. We have not looked at this. And when you look at that, it's 4,000 pay raise for teachers. So that's what every teacher right now sees, that they're going to get $4,000. And that's not even the truth.
This will not fund that.
I think our teachers and all of our administrators and everyone should start calling their representatives in Columbia, because this is unacceptable. This is inappropriately done and unacceptable. And it is an election year, and and this looks good, but this is not good. Thank you.
Now, I will say that we have reached out to some number of members of our delegation who were not aware that the details of this did not fund a $4,000 raise. And we are working to communicate with all of them the implications of this and what something like that would actually cost.
Well, I appreciate you bringing this to us this morning. I'm disappointed that that we always try to look good during election year, and you've just got to be honest with the people, and you've got to be honest with the public, and you've got to be honest with the teachers and everyone involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So just a couple of questions. So this is currently sitting at Ways and Means. It hasn't been passed out of Ways and Means?
Passed out of Ways and Means, I believe being distributed to the House members this week, or has been distributed?
Yeah, the budget is put on their desk this week. They've gone back today, so they're just now seeing it. And then next week, they'll take the budget up. They usually start that on Monday rather than their normal Tuesday.
Okay. So it's been passed out of the House Ways and Means. Now it's sitting as part of the House recommended budget. Have we seen the Senate's recommended budget? Is this same language included in their draft?
The Senate is starting on a budget, and they will receive the budget from the House, and then they usually work on their own version. I have talked to some people that said the Senate Finance Committee is aware of the shortfall.
House Ways and Means has several members of our delegation on it, correct? So,
Correct. We've got 4.
and that's Mark Willis,
Chandra Dillard, Gary Smith, and Bruce Bannister.
Bruce Bannister. And so they approved this. It came out of their committee.
Correct.
On Senate Finance, do we have members of our delegation on Senate Finance?
Yeah, I'll go pull those up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess, what's concerning for me is actually it's this idea, because I've heard it now for several years, this idea that districts that can afford to do more than what the state is requiring are being penalized and given less than districts that can't. And when you look at a district like us, that I think bravely took on the idea of getting teachers above $40,000 a year years ago, and now the districts are trying to catch up with us, you're essentially going to allow those districts to jump ahead of us with a disproportionate amount of state funding. And then you're going to tell the other districts, well, if you want to catch up now with those districts, you're going to have to raise your millage. And so it is concerning to me that this General Assembly is choosing winners and losers when we're all trying to make sure that we are adequately paying our staff, adequately recruiting and retaining quality professionals. But it's also concerning to me that they're choosing winners and losers at a time when the market is making it tough for anybody to attract quality staff. And so I hope that this board can use some of our influence with our friends in our delegation to help correct this problem before it gets approved. And I'm happy to have the advocacy committee take this up after hearing comments from the other members.
Yes, well, my questions have been answered, but I just want to say again, history continues to repeat itself. And the fact that I mean, that's being very kind to say it's misleading. A fact is a fact. It's either a fact or it's not. And it's so, I mean, so that's being very kind to say it's misleading, that teachers are excited and they're going to be getting campaign literature in the mail because that really looks good when you send that out and you say, I supported a $4,000 raise and I supported an 11-to-1 student teacher ratio. And then who's going to be the bad guys in this? Your local school board's going to be the bad guy all the way around, because we're going to be expected to either raise taxes enough to give them all that someone else promised but didn't give. I mean, so it beckons back to those days of Act 388 when all of us, we kept saying, don't do this, don't do this. And then all of a sudden, 2 or 3 years later, there were unintended consequences. And we just need to make sure that you know, that, I don't know, that we yell loud enough, that we contact our legislators, that we make sure that those unintended consequences don't catch us again. Because I have that fear of knowing how much a re-election means to, thank goodness we are nonpartisan, but how good that looks on campaign literature that goes out that says, I did this for you, when this is gonna, as my colleagues have said, this is gonna really create a situation where you have a battle between districts, because you have people that now love to come to Greenville, that now they're going to be tempted to go to other districts, because either we're going to have to tax our small businesses even more because of the unintended consequences of still lingering from Act 388, and to be able to keep promises that someone made from Columbia, and it's not going to translate to our local funding. So I'm glad to hear that we're talking, and that we have and so whatever more we can do before, as they used to tell us, the train has left the station and it becomes a train wreck. So I think that we should all, you know, make sure our communities are aware, our constituents are aware. You know, sometimes that means more in an election year than a call from your board member, is that your constituents start understanding and our teachers are understanding exactly what this is going to translate to, that it just puts us in an, you know, where you look at that and, I mean, who doesn't want to be for $4,000 teacher raise? Yay! Who doesn't want to be for 11-to-1? You know, and so these teachers that have so much put on them right now, they don't have the time to weed through. I mean, it takes us a full-time person just to keep up with what's going on in Columbia. So we need to make sure that our constituents, our parents, and our teachers realize the understanding of that what they're doing in Columbia is going to be very, very painful to translate to leaving it to us to keep those promises that they're making. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just want to make a couple of statements. My heart sinks when I hear this information. I want to give Greenville County their props when they try to correct promises other people make for us to make good. I like what one of my colleagues said about we must learn to be honest. And when the public looks at what happens, people could have just as easily said we're going to give an $8,000 pay raise for teachers, when in reality that is almost impossible, because we have to do certain things in order to make that happen. My heart feels for other districts that cannot even begin to make that promise come true. So I would just like for the public to make note that people are making statements, whether it's an election year or not an election year, that they have nothing to base those statements on. And look at what has been done, not just with this, but I go all the way back to 388, which is something I've heard since I've been on the board that they have not untangled. But I do thank Greenville County for trying to do what we can for teachers. Since I've been on the board, that has always been what Greenville County has done, not just for teachers, but for everybody involved in making sure that our students get to that next level. So this is just a statement of mine, is that make sure you watch when people make statements. You ask yourself, how will they make those statements true? Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Wells. Thank you. You know, these days, politics is all about sound bites, and $4,000 raise, that's gold, right? Who could pass that up? But the devil is in the details, and as Ms. Morrison-Pierce said, our funding system is so convoluted in the way we fund education. So I am going to, for a second, give our legislators, particularly those that are the ones we elect in Greenville County, the benefit of the doubt and say, I know they had great intent. I believe the intent was to help with teacher retention and recognize that the job we're asking teachers to do isn't commensurate with what we're paying them. So understanding that, I guess, perhaps it may be beyond kind of what we can do now, because we're all sort of seeing this for the first time, and maybe Mr. Lewis needs to address it. But, you know, what is the other solution that we believe would have been a more straightforward way to handle this? Would it be adjusting the salary schedule for teachers across the board? Because then that would have made it clear that Greenville County is already at a much higher level. And then it wouldn't have felt so much like propaganda, and it would have really felt more like we're really trying to raise the bar for how we value teachers. So that's my first question, Dr. Royster, is do we think that would be an adjustment that they could make that would get to what they're trying to accomplish?
I think it's, I would agree with you that the state funding currently is a convoluted formula. But to try to revise that without input from people that deal with school finance, and to do it very quickly, and again, without that kind of input, is the wrong way to correct it. There's been work at the state level that has gone on for more than 2 years that has included district finance officials and superintendents in providing input. I believe the original work was commissioned, so to speak, by Senate Finance. And Frank Rainwater has done a good bit of that work and put together several comprehensive proposals. This looks very much like a little slice of one of them. But his were not designed to be done in isolation. They were designed to be a comprehensive reform. And he met with superintendents that were representative of all size districts, all sorts of fiscal abilities, and listened to what they had to say. So to do this without having that kind of input, it creates these kind of problems. I think that many of our legislators believed what many of us or the public believed. $4,000 means $4,000 for all teachers. I don't think they saw that little line down there. And I don't know that they had opportunity to see the numbers. You look at the statewide numbers, and they're in your handout. If you start doing the math on it, you realize this isn't going to work this way. If we had been consulted, what we would have said is you need to continue to pursue the work that Frank Rainwater's doing to revise and simplify funding. And in the short term, what has worked best for us, and I think it's worked very well for all school districts. Several years ago, you may remember they provided a flat raise to every cell on the schedule, which number one means every teacher gets a raise. They funded 100% of that flat amount. They funded the fringe cost associated with it through EIA fringe and salary support, and they provided sufficient funds to almost pay for the steps. Now, our steps cost more because we pay more. So it still required some local effort, but the whole system's based on some state and some local effort. That would have been far better. If that number is 4,000 or 3,000 or 2,000 or 1,000, then provide 100% of that number in the fringe. Instead of creating this whole new animal of you got these 11.2 teachers per student, doesn't include some people, folds others in there that aren't teachers, and without regard, other than they consider your index tax paying ability, without regard to ability to raise funds, put a requirement on. And I've not yet seen anything that alleviates the district's requirement to give a step raise, although you could use this money for it. It's very clear you don't have to use the money to provide a $4,000 raise.
Well, that was the other question I was going to ask, is because it seems like certainly you could look at that amount and say to a teacher, $4,000, yes, your step is included in that, right? So certainly they could have had that.
But as you can see, if you go back to what we have sort of traditionally done, it would just about fund that, which would be a step for all teachers, 2% for those not getting a step, and 2% for all other employees, and cover the fringe. It would just about do that. But that's a far cry from $4,000 for every teacher.
And I guess too, I saw you have mentioned that they apply the index of tax paying ability to this, which I believe for us means we get 75 cents on the dollar. Is that still about the right?
What's a new ITPA? We just got a new one, Robin. Changing the split to what? That she's wanting the split.
So we're getting 73 cents on the dollar.
Specifically, they took those new weighted pupil units and gave you a share of those teachers with that weighted pupil unit, and then applied the index tax paying ability to determine the state amount you got. That's kind of the short version of their formula. And the formula is fully spelled out in the second attachment to board docs, which is the presentation from Revenue and Fiscal Affairs.
Well, unfortunately, because the system is so convoluted, it's hard work, and it's going to take a lot of people that spend every day in it, like school finance officers, like superintendents, to figure out what the best path forward is. So, it's unfortunate. It seems in all the things related to education, local school districts, local school boards are being left out of the conversation in being able to help drive education forward. We've done a great job. In my 12 years sitting on the board, I'm really proud of where I've seen this state go, where I've seen this district go, but, it's not a great soundbite. It's not going to play well, right? So I guess I look forward to working with the advocacy committee to see how we can try to address this train wreck and see if we can turn it back toward the good intent that the legislators had in mind. So thank you, Dr. Royster.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, Ms. Goodwin Caldwell.
Thank you, Ms. Dooley. Judy, where are they on the tax reform right now? Because I know that, I know when we were at the school board conference, they were saying that the whole thing needed to be overhauled in order for us to get to the base student cost. And what I'm hearing is that when she said 73, is that 73 cents on the dollar, is that for our base student costs? So our base student cost has never really fully been funded, and now they putting this on us. So where are they with the tax reform? Because they keep saying they're gonna do an overhaul, tax reform, and we need this.
They're talking about it. And they've talked about it for a number, is a heavy lift. And they're talking about it.
Just talking.
And the Senate seems to have taken the stance that it's going to lead that, but it hasn't happened yet.
So they put this out here that the teachers are gonna get this $4,000 pay raise, but it's coming back on the boards, like they said, that we are gonna have to increase millage in order for us to be able to cover this. I implore the public, the teachers, everybody, get in touch with your legislators, because they always doing these unfunded mandates, and they promise things, but it always comes back on the boards for us to do it, and then, like you say, it looks like we are just raising taxes just to be raising them. But these are unfunded mandates. The cost of living, Dr. Royster, I know we put up there 2%, but that 2%, it doesn't include the cost of living, does it?
We simply use that as an example because that's what we have been doing over the last several years. As a part of our budget preparation for the budget workshop, we'll provide you with an updated cost of living number. It's going to be higher than 2%. For several years, it's been 2% or less. But it's not going to be 2% when we run those calculations. We put this together pretty quickly based on the work we've already done and what we found out at the very end of last week. So this was, we're confident in our numbers here based on the numbers we were given, but we're on the front end of the budget preparation process.
Thank you for being real with us as to what this would cost us as a district. I would hope that the legislators in the state would just be real with the people. All of the people that vote them in to these offices, just be real with us. Let us know. And it upsets me when they have that ultimate goal of just being reelected. This looks good. It's just propaganda. Be real with us. That's all I got to say. Thank you, Ms. Doolin.
Dr. Stiles.
Dr. Royster, first, I'd like to say thanks for your timeliness on this, and thanks for your presentation. And I'd like to say, as a board member and also as a former educator, it's rather shocking and certainly misleading, and that's concerning. And as a former principal myself, there's one basic principle of leadership that we all know, is that when you're making large decisions that include a massive amount of people, it's important to get the key people to the table. So I'm very let down by the fact that superintendents and finance directors were not involved in that decision. So we can't change that at this point, but what we can do is we can advocate with our elected officials, and I think Derek's right. I think it's time, and as a member of the advocacy committee, I think that we need to meet immediately, and we need to set the pace for the rest of the state, and we need to advocate, and we need to tell them what we would like and what we expect, and how that we can all come together and be a better team and work for our teachers and our students in a better way. So I just wanted to say again, thank you for that. And also, Julie, just want to say how much I appreciate the role that you serve for our district at the state level and communicating information back to us. That's really important. So again, I commend our district on how we've handled that. And I feel like that as a board that we can be a leader in this, and hopefully for the future we can maybe support our elected officials so these kind of problems will not continue to pop up in the future. So thank you.
Meek.
Thank you, Ms. Dillon. I only have one question, really.
Dr. Oyster, if we only get to $19 million, what's going to be your proposal to this board? Say this passes, goes through. What will you have to do? That's my only question.
I think what you would likely see from us is a proposal very similar to what we proposed in the past. And that's the one that's right there. I think that's what you would likely see. Now, again, we've not completed the process. We know, cost of living doesn't only affect employees and their pay, it affects the goods and services we procure. It affects the contracts that we have. So we know there are going to be cost increase in various areas of our budget. We're working through that process right now. But I think you see something very similar to what's on the screen in front of you now, that kind of that bottom line down there would be very similar.
Prentice Wells.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to also extend.
Yeah, without objection, can we extend for 5 minutes?
No, that's plenty. I'm going to agree with Dr. Stiles and Mr. Lewis. Mr. Lewis being the chair of the advocacy committee, and Dr. Stiles, myself. And are you on the advocacy? I think, anyway, being on the advocacy, I think we need to respond immediately. If it means a call meeting, whatever, I think we need to have a special call meeting so we can go ahead and address this, because I think time is of the essence. I think they need to be aware that perception is one thing, but actuality is totally different. And when you're playing with people's thought process and mindset that they think they're getting this and they're not in reality, and to put that burden on everyone else and not even to take into consideration all of our employees here in the district, I think we need to make them aware, because they obviously have not looked at the big picture. And what really concerns me is when they had superintendents and people from finances from the districts, and they did not adhere to what they were discussing. And so that is my biggest concern. But once again, thank you so much. I mean, I too thought these teachers were getting $4,000. And I know we're paying our teachers over $42,000 a year, and we're the highest in the state thus far. But they still think they were going to get $4,000. So I just think we need to address it through advocacy. And Dr. Royster, once again, this was a total shock to me. I was not expecting this morning. I thought we were just going to have a great meeting. And now I'm all stressed out over this, because I know I'm going to get like tons of calls, and what are we doing about it? So thank you, and I'm willing to take those calls and address them. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sutter.
Where did the figure $4,000 come from?
The information that's been released at the state level, I assume from Ways and Means is where it originated.
Do they do that every year?
No, sir.
Every year, don't we offer a pay increase for our employees?
Yes, sir. And every year there has been some inclusion, almost every year, of a pay increase at the state level. The only other time it was expressed as a flat rate increase was 2-3 years ago, and the amount was 2. Robin, it's only happened one other time that it was expressed as a flat increase. And at that time, it did not have this language, the last bullet, in it. It was clearly set out as so much per cell, and you applied that to the teacher salary schedule. And they also provided the increased fringe benefit cost, and they provided almost enough money to meet the step increase the same year. And every year of the last at least 17, there's been a required step increase except one.
What do you recommend the board do, Dr. Worcester?
Communicate your concerns about this this proposal, because it has not yet been voted on the floor of the General Assembly. And we've communicated with some members of the delegation. We communicated first with the chair of the delegation, and I think it would be sufficient to say that perhaps they believed the way we believed. Now, you'd need to ask them individually, but the impression that we got in those early communications were they believed it was $4,000 for a teacher.
Mr. Meek, are we going to do this as an individual board members or as a collection from the board members? Are we going to come up with another resolution?
Yes, please, Mr. Meek.
Mr. Sudduth, I think the advocacy committee will be having a meeting real soon to discuss, and it'll probably come through the committee, but it would not hurt if each individual talked to your legislator or someone that you know in the legislation, so that, because the 14th is what day next week? Monday. It's going to start with coming to the full house in Columbia on Monday. So I think we've got the rest of the week to make sure at least our delegation is aware of the consequences, and hopefully we'll come up with some other conclusion, and we'll change that, because they could send it back to the Ways and Means in Columbia, or they could do it there on the floor at the House. So that'll be up to them to do that. But I think letting our legislators know individually would be a good start, Pat.
I'm sure my chairman of my committee will come up with an answer for this. But we got to wait till how long to do that?
24 hours.
Yeah, we'll have to give the public 24 hours notice of the next meeting, so it'll be up to Mr. Lewis to call that meeting.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Just as information, as a reminder, we've communicated this to the chair of the delegation, some other members, and now that you have what we presented today, every member of our delegation will receive a copy of this presentation. So they will have that in hand from the administration, along with the concerns we have, and certainly whatever you all may do in addition to that would be most helpful. And at whatever point, I get the impression Mr. Lewis is going to call a meeting, but that could probably, the announcement could be made as soon as he makes a determination as to the day and time, with 24 hours notice.
Mr. Lewis?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, so my recommendation would be that we take a couple of steps here that we can all do separately and collectively. One is, if we have this presentation, I would encourage each board member to send that to the members of our delegation. In particular, I would encourage it to send it to the members of the Finance Committee of the Senate, which includes Senator Turner, Senator Corbin, and Senator Martin, and Senator Allen. Because those are members who have...
And Danny Burton.
And Danny Burton. So we have 5 members who are affiliated with the Greenville Legislative Delegation who ultimately will approve the Senate version. So I think letting them see this presentation from each of us separately would be something we can do without the board having to take action. So we can do that today. And I can send out today an email that lists all the members of the House Ways and Means and the Senate Finance Committee so that you can communicate with them directly. Dr. Royster and Julie, I think, are already working as district staff to communicate this. So there's lots of opportunities for individual communication, I think, to happen in the next 48 to 72 hours. We already have an advocacy committee meeting scheduled for next Tuesday, and so my recommendation would be that we move it up to 4:30 to give plenty of time for us to get something approved. And between now and then, I will get a draft of a resolution that perhaps the committee members could all agree to electronically separately, and then I can get that draft out to everybody before Friday so that you have a chance to see what should be approved at Tuesday's advocacy committee meeting and then at Tuesday's board meeting. Because remember, our meeting schedule changes because of spring break. So we can get all of this done by next Tuesday and get it onto the agenda for Tuesday night's board meeting and get it approved. So I think we can do some separate work between now and Tuesday, and then get consensus on some language that we can put out then. So that if that works for Chairman Meek, that would be my recommendation. Thumbs up means consent. So the other thing I did want to point out though, so we know that they've allocated in the House 196 million for these raises. Is that correct?
On the handout we received, the statewide total is 196 million, I believe is correct. I don't have that right in front of me. They have a little over 200,000 set aside. What's not included in there are the state-supported schools, i.e. governors, the three governor schools. You have agriculture, arts, and math and science. You got the School for the Deaf and Blind, probably DJJ. There's some state entities that employ teachers. And then there's some, I guess, reserve there. But the amount doesn't fix this. I mean, you see what the total, if you really do $4,000, how much that, there's not an extra amount sitting there that would cover that shortage.
No. So
and even doing that, the district shares are not something most districts could ever meet. I'm not sure if you wanted to, if you had a desire to put every meal that you have available towards this, I'm not sure it would fully cover it.
So my question is actually a suggestion, which is, if we know they've put 196 million into the budget, and we know that we believe that 67,223 employees is correct, then if you took the 196 million and you divided it by the 67,000 employees, we're looking at a 2,900 raise. So it seems to me our advocacy should be to encourage the General Assembly to take the amount of money that they've approved and to just equally distribute it among all of the teaching positions that they have demonstrated this is appropriate for, which would not be a $4,000 raise, but it would be the accurate raise for the amount of money that they are contributing to this thing. And so teachers could get a $2,900 raise across the state, rather than having some districts get a 2% raise, which is what I think is going to happen based on the numbers I've seen here, and other teachers getting a $4,000 raise, which I think is an inequitable way to address underfunding teachers across the state.
I didn't do the math on it, but just as a reminder, because we're not, it's not, I guess, in bold up there. If you calculated 2,900 coming off of that 354 million, that's going to include the fringe cost. So that would be part of that 2,900 that a teacher would never see. So the actual dollar amount to a teacher would be less than that.
Okay. I don't have any further questions.
Thank you. Without objection, can we extend for 5 more minutes? Mr. Meek.
I was just going to say to the board that this district is not alone in its calculation when it goes to other districts. They're going to be facing this, telling their teachers and everyone else, hey, it's not going to be $4,000 unless they want to come up and pay all the differences, the fringes. So I think every district is going to be looking at this. It's just not going to be us. So hopefully from all over the state, they will be getting this message in Columbia, and they will go back and under, if that's all the money they have, the 196,000 or 196 million, then, they need to bounce back and adjust that down to the 2,900 or whatever. But I think the whole state's going to be in the same boat that we are. So they're going to be swimming along with us to the legislature.
Are there any other speakers? Okay, then that will conclude item 4.03. And we will go to 4.01, which is the nomination to the Greenville Technical College Area Commission. Mr. Meek.
Thank you again. I think everyone received the letter from the delegation. The legislature has required us to, every 4 years, to renominate a person to their area board for the Greenville Tech. Dr. Royster has been serving on that, I think, at board for 12 years or so, Dr. Royster, and he would like to do it again. I think he's representing as well. So therefore, Madam Chairman, I'd make a motion to approve the renomination of Dr. W. Burke Royster.
One seat on the board.
Well, I know you've done a lot of, what being on that board has allowed you to do is been really partner with them and giving them the insight into our programs and how those intersect. So I'm happy you're doing that, but it's just curious about the history. Thank you.
And I appreciate you saying that and would agree. I think it has greatly helped our relationship with Greenville Tech, because I can immediately share with them the details of what we're doing and immediately know the details of what they're doing.
No more questions? Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Congratulations, Dr. Royster. We can move on to 4.02, which is the approval of the 2020 redistricting map. Mr. Webb.
Thank you. Give me just about 10 seconds to set up here. Countdown is on. Mr. South is counting down for me. That's right. All right, so good morning. As you can see behind me, I have two maps and they are on board docs, so you have them, but I thought I would bring the hard copy versions. There's not a good place to put them anymore on the room. It used to be on that side, but now they're sort of behind me. But these are the two versions that have been produced by the State Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Office. And so that's what we will be discussing today. Before we go into detail about both of these, I want to just kind of frame up redistricting again for you. I know in December you had a presentation by that office, State Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Office. 3 or 4 analysts were on Zoom answering your questions and talked to you about sort of the parameters and the process of redistricting. And just as a reminder, this is something that has to be done every 10 years based upon growth and census data for everybody, all counties, cities, school districts, legislature, so it's across the board. And as you know, Greenville County has had tremendous growth in the last 10 years. So there will need to be some changes to the current electoral map for school board members. And so we'll talk about sort of the benchmark of that data in a second. Before we do that, just a reminder of some of the legal parameters that were discussed in December, but I want to emphasize these. The core principle, legal theory of redistricting is that there's a one person, one vote principle. It's under the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. That's the idea that everybody's vote has similar impact and effect, and therefore they have the equal ability to elect officials. And so that's why it's so important to have districts that are comparable, not always entirely the same, obviously, because that's not possible, but comparable as far as their size, as far as the number of population within each district. The second legal principle is make sure that they're as compact as possible. Now, obviously, there are some, looking at the map, that are more compact than others, but geographically, with population density, they are as compact as we can get them. Number 3 is keep districts contiguous. You don't want islands under the Voting Rights Act. You want things and areas to be contiguous with each other. And number 4 is the Voting Rights Act itself. As you know, and as I've discussed with you previously, 10 years ago, as well as the last few months, we are still under the legal requirements under the Voting Rights Act. 2013 in the Shelby County case, the Supreme Court removed the requirement for pre-clearance under Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. So, for example, 10 years ago, I had to write, after you approved the version of the map, I had to write the Department of Justice and submit our information to the Department of Justice, and they had to clear that map and those numbers. We do not have to go through that process this year. However, we still have the legal requirements and obligations to meet all the other requirements of the Voting Rights Act, primarily Section 2, which prevents any sort of discrimination or voter dilution. So any sort of packing or fracturing of voters is prohibited. Minorities protected, voting impact of certain voting groups. So those are the legal principles that we have to follow as we develop these versions. All right, so the 2020 census benchmark. This is, again, based upon the census, the data from that, and you can see there was tremendous growth in several, really throughout the county, but in a few districts more so than others. District 27, for example, their growth was the highest at 18.20% more than the average mean of the population throughout the Greenville County. As you can see, the goal there is 45,282 as the target population. And actually, I needed to talk about that goal target for a second. Yesterday, actually, I received information from the State Fiscal Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Office, and they informed me that they inadvertently missed a census block in this information. So the actual target of the goal that's for us, for each district, now is 45,306. 45,306. So it is a little bit higher, and I will say, look, it was an inadvertent mistake by that office. They have otherwise been fantastic to work with. They are having a lot of requests from a lot of different entities. They have been as responsive as possible. So I really do appreciate the work that office has done. Also, I would be remiss, and I don't want to forget to say this, that our own Planning and Demographics Department has done and helped out with this. They printed out off these maps, and they have kind of reconfigured to put schools on there and certain other places that are relevant for you as a school board member, and that has been tremendously helpful. So with that all being said, the census benchmark shows the growth in Greenville County the last 10 years. So on the high side, you had 18.20. On the low side, you had a negative 8.98 for a deviation between the lowest and the highest as a total of 27.1% deviation. So that tells you that there's going to have to be substantial changes to even out that population so that the district complies with the one person, one vote standard. So, based upon that information and based upon what was discussed in December with the Zoom presentation by the Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Office, we have been working with them in the last 2 months to create a version, 2 versions actually, for your initial consideration. And this is all sort of the next step in the process. And I'll sort of tell you now, fast forward to what I envision, is that these 2 versions are before you today. However, if there are any changes based upon your review and discussion today, there is certainly that possibility for a 3rd version to be developed. And my recommendation is, if that's indeed the case, that this committee of the whole pass these 2 up to the board and instruct the administration to work with the Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Office for a third version. So you would have 3 versions of this map before you next Tuesday at your school board meeting. Okay, so that would be my recommendation if there are any changes to these versions. So version 1 was developed again by the Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Office with all the legal parameters in mind, and there you can see the numbers before you on the PowerPoint. Importantly, they were able to keep intact the 2 majority minority districts in District 23 and 25, and that goes with version 2 as well. And you can see the numbers there as far as the racial breakdown and number of voters. The deviation in version 1, even though the target goal number is off, the deviation is still correct, and that it's 4.05. 4.05. Now, from version 1 that we received, and working with Mr. Meek and other individual board members through just discussions with them, before we brought this to you, to the committee of the whole for public comment and input and review and discussion, which is extremely important in the process. I can't emphasize that enough, that the public needs to weigh in, and we put a message on the district website, and we'll put up other messages encouraging public comment. But in working with Mr. Meek and others, we developed a version 2, slightly tweaking a few areas. And so you can see the differences between the two. They aren't too significant, but there are a few places that were tweaked, including a little bit around District 25, that boundary. And so this is version 2 on the computer screen right now, the numbers for that. And that Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Office did a great job in leveling out the population. So the deviation there is 5.48%. So as a reminder, in December we talked about this, the goal is anything below 10% deviation. Lower the number, the better, but 10% is really the goal. What we strive for is, in all honesty, I strive for is 5 to 6%. Okay, so that is the goal there with the 2 maps. So that is a summary of the 2 versions, the process, and I will open it up for questions and discussions.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. Ms. Goodwin-Caldwell?
Thank you, Mr. Webb. And I know that this has been tedious work because we're still working on District 25 and with the surrounding districts. I've been speaking with, it's gonna be, we need another change, so we will need another draft for District 25. I've spoken with Mr. Meek, and for our area, we are looking at on Old Pelzer Road, going down Old Pelzer Road, Piedmont Golf Course Road. It was in version 1, but they took it out of version 2, and we are asking that be put back in 25. And I spoke with Mr. Meek, and he agreed. Also going down Augusta Road, past West Georgia Road to Garrison Road, and back up to West Georgia Road. And we agreed on that. Also, and that was like a triangle from Woodmont Park, Garrison Road, up to West Georgia Road. And also speaking with Mr. Lewis, we are recapturing from version 1. Version 1, it had iCar up to Fisher, but version 2, they took it out, and we have agreed for them to put that back. So I guess it'll be a draft, a third draft.
Yes, and I'll be happy to get that started with the Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Office and any other changes this afternoon. Time is of the essence. I failed to mention to you that the crossover date for the General Assembly is April 7th. So we really truly need to pass this in March. Now it's a process. We've been working on it, and we can continue to develop and amend it.
Road that the Pelzer Road is the dividing line between 26 and 25 as we discussed earlier. And Ms. Goodwin Caldwell agreed that Pelzer Road would be the borderline.
As I understand, the western side would remain with you, eastern side.
That's correct.
Wow. Right. Okay.
That's good.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis?
I'm fine with these changes too. Just the clarification, the board needs to make a motion to send maps versions 1 and 2 to the board meeting and to direct the administration to bring a third map with the recommended changes?
That would be my recommendation. Yes, sir. So therefore, you could not advance these 2 maps. I believe it would be wise to have that as an option, just to have all 3 potentially before you. But for example, if you did not believe that version 1 has any realistic, possibility of being adopted, then perhaps that's an option that you take. But I would recommend taking all 3 to the full
Just so
board.
they're all on the table when we
That's
get
right.
there. So before I make that motion, just a clarifying question. So if we direct you to do this work and we now know that the next meeting is on Tuesday, what happens if we don't have the third map by the board meeting on Tuesday night?
So I talked to the lead analyst that's been working with us. He is confident that he will have something to us by Thursday of this week at the latest.
So, Madam Chairman, I'd just like to make a motion to move maps 1 and 2 to the board meeting, along with directing the administration to prepare a third map with the committee's recommendations.
Great. Is there any additional discussion? All right. Ms. Wells?
I guess just when you look at the over-under and the idea being you want to maintain as much as possible throughout the 10-year period, that everyone, that equal vote, equal voice, I guess we didn't really give any consideration to future, looking at what we project is going to be the change, or did we?
I spoke with the lead analyst on that, and we can best estimate what areas might grow the most based upon past growth. But again, you never know when a part of the county might explode in development or population growth. So that was considered. There were a couple districts that we tried to lower a little bit more in the second version because of that anticipated growth. But again, it's in 10 years, it'll have to be redone and changed because of that growth no matter what. Yeah.
And then what I remember as being part of the criteria, I believe, and you didn't talk about it today, so I just want to clarify that in some ways you look at this and you think, well, gosh, this is like, these things are all jagged, and just like people tell us about, when people talk about where they're zoned for their school, they're like, well, this doesn't make any sense. I can't figure it out. I live right across the street in that neighborhood somewhere else. So in a lot of ways, this is very similar, that there are many districts that kind of jag, in and out. But part of that is because you're trying not to change, you're trying not to make, I can't remember the language, but something like you're trying not to make significant changes. You're trying to maintain the districts intact as much as possible?
Sure. So 1, obviously have to be contiguous. 2, you try to not make any too significant changes if you don't have to. And so, you can see from the current map that we have, your electoral lines, they're fairly consistent with these two versions. I mean, there's certainly changes, but it's not a wholesale change aspect. But as we talked about in December, a key aspect to this is keeping incumbents and elected officials in your district. You can't, that is a primary objective. And so that's what we have to work with all the other moving parts, growth in different parts of the county. So a lot of moving parts, a lot of different factors to consider. But certainly some of these areas appear jagged, and that's how you have to kind of pick up some population in different parts to make sure you have the one person, one vote standard met. But I'm confident in how they're drawn to meet the legal requirements.
Well, and I'm asking that partially because, when I got elected in 2010, all that at the bottom was my area, right? Or I think most all of it. And so in some ways, if I wanted to try to maintain that representing those folks and help, Mr. Meek, who really he's on that west side, but he's kind of boxed in there. I couldn't really try to say, okay, give everything to the north, to take everything to the north of where I live and put it in another district, because it would, to get to help Mr. Meek, it's got to stair step and affect all these other districts that we're trying not to disrupt. Is that?
Absolutely. So, you change one district and it has sort of a cascading effect on the others. And so you are correct. Over the last really 20 years, District 28 has sort of gone up north and retreated some as far as total geographic area, whereas Mr. Meek, 26 has come up and taken a little bit more geography based upon population.
But that wouldn't be, from the district as a whole standpoint, it wouldn't be desirable to try to do that, because it would then potentially affect, all those districts that move up into the middle part of the county that would have to be adjusted.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. I'm good. Thank you.
All right, I think that. First, Mr. Webb. There is a motion and a second, so all those in favor, please say aye.
The motion, please.
Mr. Lewis, can you repeat the motion, please?
I think the motion is to move maps 1 and 2 to the board meeting, along with a third map that incorporates board member feedback.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. And that concludes section 4 of our agenda today. Mr. Meek.
Thank you, Ms. Dillon. Our next section is number 5, Building and Grounds. Next section, Building and Grounds, Dr. Stiles.
Thank you, Chairman Meeks. Moving on to Building and Grounds, item 5.01, Facilities Project Report. This item is for information only. Dr. Royster.
Thank you, Dr. Stiles. Colonel Carlin is here to answer any question you might have. I don't believe there's any addition or deletion from the Facilities Project Report this month, but be glad to entertain any question.
Any questions? Ms. Goodwin-Caldwell.
Yes, on Robert E. Cashin. Where is it?
He's right over there.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, he's waving.
On Robert E. Cashin, the addition, is that supposed to open the next school year?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
This coming school year. This coming school year.
Yeah, well, 22, 20.
Yes, ma'am.
And Cashin is gonna be K-8, right? Is that K-8?
No, ma'am.
No.
What's the addition for?
The addition is simply for growth.
For growth?
Yes.
With the weight rooms, we only have 3 that's completed.
No, ma'am, there are 5 that have been completed so far. Under the status section, I'm saying it can be a little bit confusing. If you look under schedule completion, the complete is contained under status.
And you have 4 more that's supposed to be completed this year?
That is, well, completed by the spring.
Which is now? Right?
We're definitely into it.
This is like fake spring right now. We'll have winter again next week. So that gives us like another month.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Lewis?
Thanks. Just a couple of questions to follow up on that. So the Malden High weight room, we still feel like that's on track to be completed next spring?
Yeah, there's no change to the timeline.
Correct.
They've not come back to me with a final design. We've had about 5 iterations of that.
Yes, sir.
So we're underway.
So we have not yet approved a final design for the Malden
No, sir.
weight room? Okay. And then the new elementary school at the old J.L. Mann site.
Yes.
At the last meeting, we approved some additional funding for some of the site work that need to be done for the high school field space, but also for the car line and all that. We feel like the allocations we approved at the last meeting will cover the work.
Yes, sir. We don't have any information that would cause us to believe differently.
If we could just have somebody maybe check out J.L. Mann High School's the car line. What I saw the other day was now that all the construction is finished on Fair Forest Way, it's really difficult to turn left out of the parking lot because now it's a 2-lane road with a very short median. And it just might be useful for us to look at how that car traffic turns out of the student parking lot and whether we need to make some accommodations for
Well,
that.
somebody look at that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Goodwin Caldwell?
One more question. I see that you only have Malden High School in spring of 2023. Why do we only have 1 next year and 4 in 2024?
Ms. Stack might elaborate on it, but the basics is that's how we were able to fund it based on current funds available.
It has to do when the money's available. All the money's not sitting there for those projects. It's created over a timeline. And I know this has been a while back. We started out as going to be about 10 years, and we collapsed that timeline down, but it has uneven numbers of projects in it that align with when we have the availability of funding.
So we only have funding for 1 in 2023?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions, Ms. Doolin?
I have a question about Rudolph Gordon and when this new sidewalk will be complete.
So we are pushing to have the sidewalk installed during spring break. We understand that SCDOT has plans to complete their portion during that time frame, and now that we've been made aware of that, we are working to meet our end of the bargain.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Wells?
Dr. Royster, I know that you're going to be we did the facility assessment, and you're going to be bringing the details of that to us. But, looking at all this work that's being done and moving forward, and knowing that we have probably a lot of stuff that's in the Mars schedule that's happening, are there things that were part of that are being taken care of with some of those schools that really needed the most work? Or are we still just sort of waiting for you to bring us back a plan to do anything?
Our plan, unless something derails it between now and agenda set, is to the afternoon of Committee of the Whole in April, we'll bring you a revised plan. We've added a couple of projects to it based on growth, and we've done some other revisions to it. So and there are some things in there that we've not yet moved forward on, but they're really not Mars projects. They're like site acquisition, some things like that.
Okay, so the recommendations that were in that report related to upgrading some facilities that didn't get as much love during the BEST program, for instance.
They're all still in there. There's been a revision in the timeline, and when we bring it to you, you'll see what the timeline is with no millage increase, what the timeline would be if you increase millage. As you may recall, this is a reassessment year. So our debt service millage was rolled back 1 mil. Our operational millage was rolled back as well. So we have to, one of the reasons we deferred a little bit longer on bringing that back to you was to see what the result of that was. And we now reasonably know what that is.
Okay, so you're gonna bring that and you'll have your recommendations that came out of those assessments in addition to the new stuff for growth and the rest with a timeline for all that.
Yes, it'll look a lot like what you already saw, but there are some additions to it and a little bit of rearranging.
There are no more questions, so we're going to move on to item 5.02, Architectural Plan for CT Innovation Center at Roper Mountain. This item is for information only. Dr. Royster.
Thank you, Dr. Stiles. Colonel Carlin comes forward to get ready, he and Mr. Williams. Simply as a reminder, we have had for several years on our facilities plan the construction of an innovation center, the purpose of which is to provide space for innovative career and technical courses on an experimental or trial basis. See if those courses have substance to them as far as jobs in our community, and at which point we create enough interest in those, there's enough demand in the community, we then perhaps relocate those programs out to one or more or all career centers. So much as sometimes municipalities and counties build spec buildings for future economic development, this is to a degree a spec building for career and technical innovation, in that we put in it some high bay spaces, some other spaces. They have additional power, additional other features and support, but they're very adaptable to the program that Mr. Williams and his group have planned for the inaugural years, but also to be flexible over time. And we're here today to share with you some elevations and some floor layout designs for that facility. As you will recall, the site is in the parking lot at the base of Roper Mountain. For those of you that have been around on the board for some period of time, you may recall that a number of years ago, the county recreation headquarters was located on that site. And they vacated that property in the early 2000s, and we demoed the building. So this building is going back right in that footprint, so it does not remove or detract from any of the developed or undeveloped, more importantly, undeveloped area of the Roper Mountain Science Center. Colonel Carlin?
Thank you, sir. And we appreciate the opportunity to provide this update on the newest addition at Roper Mountain. Mr. Williams and I are going to kind of be tag teaming this presentation. I'm going to begin by going over the status of the design effort, and then he will finish up by talking about the academic programs for the facility. As Dr. Royster said, it is going to be going into the place at the very front of the campus, next to the main entrance where an existing building used to be. The facility is being designed at just under 30,000 square feet and will house on any given day about 125 students per session, 2 sessions per day, and approximately 20 teachers and staff. We are in the design development phase of the project and currently on schedule, and we anticipate opening this facility in August of 2023. The Innovation Center will be located, as we discussed, at the front of the campus and is adjacent to Roper Mountain Road and between Independence Boulevard and the main entrance. If you're traveling northwest on Independence Boulevard, which in effect you're doing as you're looking at this elevation drawing, with the Roper Mountain campus on your right, this will be the view of the new facility. From this vantage point, the building face on the right side of the rendering, in other words, where the sun appears to be shining, it reveals the entrance to the facility. The building face on the left reveals the view of the building that you'll see if you're driving northeast on Roper Mountain Road, coming towards the front of the campus. As you travel northeast on Roper Mountain Road, this is the building elevation that will be basically front and center across the intersection with Independence Boulevard. So if you've just left Costco and you're heading up Roper Mountain Road, crossing over 385, that next intersection, which is what you see right here, this is what you'll be looking at. The exterior of the facility is predominated by brick veneer and storefront window walls and entrances. Prominently displayed on this elevation is a large multi-purpose gathering space, centrally located for school functions and industry partner events. And Mr. Williams will be talking a little bit more about that space when he gets into the academic programs piece. If you were to turn right at this intersection, you'd be heading down Independence Boulevard, going southeast, basically in the opposite direction as you were in the previous slide. As you can see, this facade in particular offers endless branding opportunities for the center and also for the school district. And as the branding effort will continue to develop as the design continues to evolve. On this particular elevation, you'll notice a nice mixture of brick colors and opportunity for interesting textures. Natural lighting is also plentiful with the window design and the placement. For our final elevation drawing, this view prominently displays the entrance to the center. You'll note the left side of the building and artistic awning highlight the front entrance and welcome center, while the right side highlights the instructional spaces for robotics and emerging automotive research. In order to bring in as much natural light as possible to high bay lab spaces, you'll notice the translucent panels planned for the upper portion of the facade. You'll also notice glazed overhead door entrances to the far right where the lab spaces are. A little bit difficult to see up there, but the darker portions underneath those translucent panels is where those overhead doors will be. Moving to the site plan, you'll notice how the facility is positioned on the site adjacent, again, to Roper Mountain, and also between Independence Boulevard and the entrance to Roper Mountain. You'll note the entrance for the facility is on the right, just after the front gate, allowing for car and bus access. As the center is co-located, like Dr. Royster said, with the large parking lot that was originally designed and constructed for the 1970s state tricentennial celebration, there will also be a generous amount of parking and overflow available there. You'll note the circulation patterns for cars and buses by the various arrows. Upon exiting the site, to keep separation between the cars and buses, the cars will proceed back to the campus main road, while the buses leave the site via a right turn only exit on Independence Boulevard, and then to the signalized intersection at Roper Mountain Road. I'll conclude my portion of the presentation with a brief overview of the floor plan. You'll note the colors and then the key on the right-hand side. You'll notice administration is located on the lower left side of the drawing in red. Directly to the right of admin is the front entrance, which in the spirit of safety and security will include a secure vestibule and lobby area. Some of the more unique features of the plan include large high bay lab spaces at the front of the school with overhead doors and glazing that showcase the emerging technology programs. Those are indicated in blue, and they would be the bottom two blocks on the drawing. A large multi-purpose gathering space is centrally located for school function and industrial partner events, like I discussed in the elevation drawing. That's indicated in the green area, and that gathering space would be in the far left side of the drawing. An informal study lounge area is provided adjacent to the cafeteria. to foster cross-disciplinary collaboration. This is shown in the upper part of the drawing, also in the green area, but adjacent to what is shown as a courtyard in white to the very top of the drawing. A secure courtyard will be provided for outdoor instruction, informal gathering, and project-based learning. It'll be very similar as you've been to Fisher Middle School, that courtyard area and the ability to come out of indoor classes into that a new instructional area in the outdoors. It'll be very similar to that. Various size study rooms are provided in the center of the primary lab area that can accommodate 1 to 4 students for small independent-based learning groups. Those are indicated in the orange blocks, kind of in the center of the drawing. The entire building will consist of durable interior and exterior materials to withstand the day-to-day use of evolving curriculums. The building is also being designed with an eye towards the center as a teaching tool by showcasing structure and building systems. And again, if you've been in Fisher Middle School recently, you know how a lot of those building systems are exposed and have different colors to show the students what is part of the building instead of what are normally covered up. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Williams to discuss academic programs.
Thank you. Included in your board materials for today is a summary of academic programming. As Dr. Royster indicated, the center is being designed with an eye towards flexibility. And while we're very excited about the initial programming that'll be present at the Innovation Center, we want to make sure that we capture those flexible elements so that when we choose to move that programming out and incorporate something different, we're able to do that from a reasonable cost standpoint as well. I won't read to you the summary of the academic programming, but I do want to point out in which location we have initially determined that those should go. If you look on the lower right, all the academic lab spaces are in blue. Lower right-hand side is the emerging automotive research program. So you could think, of course, we have auto tech programs at each one of our career centers, but this will be programming that's on a higher level for students to engage in emerging technologies in automotive, specifically fuel cell technology, as well as autonomous driver technology and hybrid vehicle technology. If you're moving to the left, that'll be our automation and robotics programming. Of course, we have automation, or we have robotics clubs at middle and high schools. We have computer science classwork at middle and high schools. We don't have specific coursework in robotics. So this will be the first of its kind in our district, and we're excited about the potential and the possibility that will be here. There's a front sidewalk that kind of extends out to where the admin area goes in front of each of those. So we see that as being a demonstration space and a real practical use space for students to use for that programming as well. If you go across the hallway, so we have the study areas there between the two blue spaces. If you go across the hallway on the right, that'll be our clean energy technology. We hope to incorporate some solar panels and some other outside energy capturing devices so that students can use those in the programming as well. There's also access to the courtyard for that group of students as well so that they can be outside to participate. And of course, Roper Mountain has tremendous environmental science resources, so we anticipate a lot of integration with those resources as well for those students that are studying clean energy technologies. If you move to the left, we're really excited about cybersecurity and networking programming that will be there. This will be, we're trying to replicate sort of a technology lab space with high windows, sort of a dark server racks on the small room there to the left that you can see. So really capture a space that is industry specific and very much like you might see at MT Anderson or in the business world. Then if you go across through the gather area, the green space there, that final area is our aerospace technology area. And again, we're still working on the full programming for that, but we expect to be able to give students entry-level programming in aviation, as well as other things with aerospace science and technology, specifically aerospace engineering. So lots of programming at both the bachelor's and master's degree level in this area that students could matriculate into after that. So that's a basic summary of the academic programming. We're excited about that, but the flexibility of the spaces is really what we need to focus on, because we anticipate 3, 4, 5-year cycles of those programs, and then we would move them out. Some of these programs are conducive to moving out to a high school as well. Cybersecurity and technology really, we think, could be done in a very traditional high school classroom space. So if it's successful, the potential to move it to a high school is there as well. And we'll be happy to take any questions that you might have.
Do we have any questions?
Williams, thank you so much. I just have a quick question, and I may have missed this in the introduction. I know where this is going, and I understand the programming. Will this be like another career center type option? I mean, this is like the current career centers, students go for a portion of their day. Will this be just another option for them? Is that?
That's correct. It'll be half-day programming, so students could choose to come in the morning or in the afternoon, depending on the level of the programming. So as we get it up and running, we anticipate that there would be level 1 courses, just like there are at the career centers, and then level 2 courses for students who wanted to come back for a second year of programming as well.
Okay, and please remind me when this what's the expected?
August of 2023.
2023.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Leventis Wells.
Able to be enrolled in this facility. How many will it hold?
Maximum program capacity would be 25 per program. And so we could have 125 students in the morning and then 125 students in the afternoon. We anticipate it might take us some time to ramp up to that, but that would be maximum capacity.
Weeks, you're just going to have it all on Roper Mountain, aren't you? Next thing you know, they'll be riding all of they won't even be driving those cars down there. They'll just have them go automatically. So, good for you. Thank you. I think it's great. Very innovative.
Ms. Wells?
Thank you. First on the programming, what's your process for determining what programs you're going to try to incubate there?
Yeah, it'd be a very similar process to determining which programs to have at the beginning. We spent a lot of time talking with business and industry partners to determine what the supply, what the demand is in this area. Cybersecurity is a great example. The Chamber of Commerce and Greenville Area Development Corps continue to come to us and say, we need a pipeline of workers in these particular programs. So can we provide that through high school level programming? And then what are the outcomes of the successes? Are there certifications where the students could enter directly into the workforce? Or are there opportunities in our area for students to enter into either technical college or bachelor's level programming in these as well? So we'll continue to have those, look at our economic data and continue to have those conversations with those partner organizations.
So I think that's something you do really in our programs in general, like trying to be sure we understand what the jobs are that are out there that are needed. But I guess what I thought I understood about this center in particular is that it was really going to be about potentially jobs that don't exist here yet, right? So if it's clean energy or if it's drone technology for whatever those purposes more and more continue to be. So I guess, how are you vetting the difference in, or is it just the size of a program? Okay, it's a program and we need jobs, but it's very specialized. So we don't want a large program in a career center. We want a small program in the center of the district.
No, I do think it's more about trying to envision the future and what jobs might be available, especially in terms of replicating those programs. I keep going back to cybersecurity, but I think we could replicate that maybe at each one of our high schools and really still continue to be able to supply, the need that is in our area for that. So I think there's kind of multiple factors for that, but I do think we'll continue to look at what are those future seeking jobs. Now it takes us some time to develop curriculum, and so oftentimes even in the emerging automotive research, we see that we're developing that curriculum as those jobs are becoming available or as they're becoming more mainstream. So there'll be a balance between how long it takes us to develop that, implement it at the center, and then push it out.
Geographic information systems is the other one.
Yeah, as well as artificial intelligence, augmented virtual reality, all those things are kind of the next layer of things that might be on the horizon for us to look at.
Okay. So on the facility itself, the location of that, how far away from Independence Boulevard is the edge of that building? Because it looks super close in the rendering. And I think the speed limit on that road is probably 45 miles an hour, but if you've ever come up through there at 8 o'clock in the morning and 5 o'clock in the afternoon, people are zooming up that, because it's basically the frontage road. It's Independence Boulevard. It's basically the frontage road, right? So how close is that building? Because there doesn't appear to be a lot of buffer between the edge of the building and that road.
I'm going to defer on this one to my team of experts.
See, I asked a question so you guys, it wasn't a waste of your time to come.
We have Steve Goggins and, I'm sorry, Michael, with SJ Normore Wright, and they're teamed with Little, and then Kathleen Powell is our resident architect. Do we know what the distance is there?
One more time.
How far the building is from Independence Boulevard? So if we go back to, I think, there.
And I don't know the exact dimension, but it appears to be about 75 feet.
Okay. One of the things that we've actually had a recent conversation about is, protection around the facility. And one of the ideas is to have some large rock type formations within the landscaping that will double as safety and security, as well as provide a nice aesthetic. So those are some of the things we're looking at.
And it's partly safety and security, but it's also about, is your environment conducive to focusing on the work you're trying to do?
Yes, ma'am.
And with that level of traffic that comes through there, that close, because you're already off the interstate, and then you have this road which is heavily traveled because there's so much of that development from those office buildings. That's the only way in and out, because you got to get to Roper Mountain Road. So it just seems like paying attention to noise levels and thinking about what those noise levels are going to look like, because we want that environment to be like the rest of the mountains, sort of I would think, kind of insulated from. All our career centers are like that. When you go into the career center, you feel like you're immersed in manufacturing or in production of something. And if you're right there too close to the road, I'm concerned about just the noise and traffic and security. So all those things
Excellent
together.
point. I think that can be mitigated in large part by plant material. We do have a fairly nice landscaping plan that doesn't show up, but the plants are shown to absorb quite a bit of traffic noise. The courtyard also steps down a bit. It's not exactly sunken, but it will step down to a grassy area. So I think that'll help mitigate noise some. The alternative would have been to have maybe located that space on the parking lot side, and that didn't seem quite appropriate either. Or the north side where you wouldn't have had any sun. So kind of lessening.
So that brings me to another one of my questions, because I know part of what's hemming you in is the entrance road to Roper Mountain, right? But we have some space there if we wanted to look at if this would be an appropriate time, Dr. Royster, to consider the circulation on the mountain again and determine, is that primary entrance road in the right place, or should we take the opportunity to look at shifting the entrance road, which would create more space and a little more buffer on Independence Boulevard side. So I know we've talked in the past about should we have different entrance and exits. I know that traffic is an issue where the mountain has gone out and put in signs that you can only turn right coming out, even though that's not technically really, DOT didn't say that, but we said that, I guess. So, is this, before we get further down the road of having this designed on the site and sort of written in stone or in concrete?
It's something they would need to look at right now.
Right.
The options are very limited. The only thing that occurred to me when I looked at this first and when I looked at it again today, I'm not sure looping the buses out would be better than looping the student traffic out on, what is that, Independence Boulevard, the frontage road.
Yes, sir.
And putting the buses up through Roper Mountain, and then making sure there's a cut through. There's already at least one crossover before you get to the top of the mountain, where you come across. You don't have to make that whole loop. Like, those are things to look at. But basically, the two ways in there or where that main entrance is now, and you can either skew it further down, which you don't want to do because that gets it too close to the intersection, and there's only so far we could skew it up. And then you got a tremendous elevation change between the entrance and the top of the mountain. So you're limited in what you can do there. So you kind of either have to come in off Frontage Road or you have to come in off of Roper Mountain. I'm not sure you could move it any further south on Roper Mountain without creating a bigger problem, nor move it any further north because it's not our property. Now, I think there's a right-of-way there from Greenville Water or Metro Connects or somebody. There's a right-of-way just north of our property.
I think Dr. Royster captured it exactly. We've got grade changes to work with and a lot of other issues. You're on a corner. The city and SCDOT will only allow us to have an entrance and egress so close to an intersection, et cetera. So everything is just about fixed in terms of where we can position things. So that said, and returning back to your original point, again, I think with some plant material and all that, we can make that outdoor space quite nice, buffer it from sound. And not ideal, maybe, if we had a 80-acre site or something like that, but I think we could make it work acceptably well.
The idea was we were trying to keep as much parking as we could because that's sort of at a premium.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. Okay. And then the last thing related to that, again, before it gets so far down the road that you can't ask questions anymore. We've talked a couple of times about, or I've mentioned, the Greenville Water System owns that large parcel because they have that tank, the water tank on the parcel, and they have a nice access road to get to their tank with the light and everything. So was there also consideration is there just, again, can you just cut off the entrance there, and could you work with Greenville Water System potentially to create a new entrance to Roper Mountain that would then allow you to have more space if you don't have the entrance road where it is anymore? Are you following me?
I do, but I know we have not looked at that.
Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate the opportunity, by the way.
It looks great. It's going to be exciting.
If there are no other questions, that concludes section 5, building and grounds. So Chairman Mix, I'll turn it back over to you.
Aye.
You're muted.
Muted. You're on mute. I didn't think you could do that if you're in this.
I didn't get any of that.
Okay, we are adjourned.
We are
Adjourned.
Okay, everybody sit still. Let's take care of the other first two items.